5 West Irvin Street. At this time, Clerk Barger, if you will, please call the roll.
Master Combs.
Here.
Master Luckmiller.
Here.
Master Hughes.
Here.
Master Buchan.
Present.
Judge Taylor.
Here. This time, I want to invite our master from the 1st District, Brian Combs, to lead us in a word of prayer.
Please join me in prayer if you would. Father, we thank you, God, for this day that you've given us, Lord, another day that you blessed us with. And Father, we're thankful, God, to live in this county and, God, to have the blessings that we have here. And Father, we ask, God, today as we go over discussion over 911, Lord, we ask God for discernment. We ask God for wisdom. We ask, Lord, that you would just give us an extra measure, Lord, of wisdom to know the right way to do things. Father, we ask, God, because we know that you love life. God, our goal is to protect that life in our community by having this service. Father, we ask, God, that you would just continue to use us as we go through this process, Lord, to communicate it to the public. God, to find a reasonable solution, God. We want that more than anything. Father, we just ask, God, that you continue to bless all those that are on the other side of 911, God, our first responders, law enforcement, fire, EMS, God, as they serve, God, even in the midst of what we saw last night in Idaho, Father, with people being shot at from fire department standpoint, Lord, we realize that they face battles every day, and God, we pray for protection over all these first responders. God, they put their life on the line to save others, and God, we acknowledge that, and we're thankful for it. God, continue to bless our community. Give us wisdom as leaders, God, to do the right thing, and may you be pleased in the outcome, because we want to please you, God, more than anything. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
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 Amen. Sheriff, if you will, lead us in the pledge.
Please stand, face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated.
First order of business today is to pay the claims and approve the transfers for fiscal year 2024-2025. Court members, this is actually the first time that we've had a regular scheduled meeting at the end of the year like this. Auditors had told us previous years we've done it a little different, but auditors wanted us to actually have a special call meeting to approve those end of year expenditures. And so this is what this meeting is being held for today. Pay the claims, approve the transfers for fiscal year 2024-2025 year-end expenses. I need a motion and a second to approve, please.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Master Luckmiller.
Yes.
Master Hughes.
Yes.
Master Buchan.
Yes.
Master Combs.
Yes.
Judge Taylor.
Yes. Next is to pay the claims and approve the transfers for fiscal year 2025-2026 starting tomorrow.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right. Call the roll.
Master Hughes.
Yes.
Master Buchan.
Yes.
Master Combs.
Yes.
Master Luckmiller.
Yes.
Judge Taylor.
Yes. Next is discussion of ordinance 2024-07. This is a joint local government, City of Berea, Madison County, Kentucky, and City of Richmond 911 fee. Jill, you going to start the conversation, or you want to be ready, I guess? I think we've had quite a few I guess, social media conversations going on. We've had a lot of conversation the past week with constituents in my office and moving forward and what to do. Just thought it was good to have an open public conversation. I know we have members from the public here today. I'm going to give them opportunities if they want to ask questions. I know Jill's prepared a document here today that is kind of the most frequent questions that we've had, that we've seen on Facebook, that people calling our office. And so I'll open it up for conversation.
Judge, I think it'd probably be best if, Jill, you just go through these, and then if there is more questions, or clarifications that people want, and we can go that route.
Yeah, I think that several of the members of the Fiscal Court had actually asked that we put this on the agenda to be able to have this conversation and this discussion. We talked about some of these things at the Fiscal Court meeting last week, but this is another opportunity for citizens to know and understand the background and the timeline. I think that's one of the questions that have come up. But I will, Magistrate Combs, I'm happy to kind of walk through some of these questions and then answers, and then we can go from there. So and these are in no particular order. The two largest questions that we have received in our office, whether via online or people coming in, emailing, phone calls, which have been many, have been related to an incorrect zoning classification. And so I'm going to start with that one because it has been the absolutely most. I'm going to go a little bit different than my paperwork here because of that. And so the question is, why is my zone incorrect? So this is the first time that we have ever used the information in this format. So you have zoning maps from the city of Berea, from Madison County, and from the city of Richmond. And then you have PVA data. For this purpose, we pulled all that together. It's never been used in this way before. So as those zoning maps, the zoning classifications were pulled over into the PVA data for the export, it was your zone may not be your actual use. So if you're in an area where you're in a PUD, which is these are the areas, or a condo community, these are the ones that we've seen most frequently, that is showing a multifamily area because there could be multifamily in that area. However, you may not be utilizing, or you may be individually owning your single-family home. And so those are the most common ones. Now, there's probably exceptions to that, but it's based on the zoning class and the zoning of your actual zone from the city.
Yeah, I want to just add something to that. I think some people are, when you say, information we got for the PVA, is people take that kind of criticizing the PVA. That is not what it is. PVA gets that zoning classification information from the cities or the county. Some areas, a good example is Killarney. Killarney was developed many years ago, and I think at the time when it was developed, the actual proper zoning for multifamily was B3, but obviously today that is not. An R3 would be the proper zoning, but the city of Richmond still has it as B3. So those just need to be fixed.
And I think it's a lot of legacy issues like that exist. Older areas or older neighborhoods that maybe have mixed use or things of that nature, and we've told hundreds of citizens this. Once we have identified that issue in a particular street or neighborhood, we've gone through and viewed every parcel and updated every parcel on that street. Banyan Boulevard and Baker Court were the two streets that were the first that had an incorrect zoning 911 classification. It does not mean your zone is wrong. It means that the classification in which you are using the property is different than how it could be zoned. So if you're in a multifamily, what's zoned as a multifamily area, but you are a single-family residence, obviously that's going to be changed for a 911 classification issue. So Banyan Boulevard, we had a citizen say, hey, mine says multifamily. We're like, you're correct, it does. We're changing the entire street. That entire Golden Leaf area is one in particular that has been, I'm going to say, problematic, but incorrectly classified. So most of these issues, again, deal with legacy zones that were not reflected on the zoning maps because the PVA nor the county or either city had used this information in this way. So when it all was pulled together, there was corrections, which is, again, why we wanted to make sure that we get it correct.
Jill, so just so the community understands, so if you have bad data going into this process, whether that bad data comes from the city of Richmond or city of Berea or Madison County, the bad data went in, and that's what came out the other end. And because it came out the other end as bad data, we're now being able to address that in this huge project. I don't think people understand how huge a project this is. And if I'm not mistaken, the county is taking the burden of doing this project when it could be that the cities could do it on their own. We're helping the cities by doing this, and we're trying to be good partners. So I just want to make sure the public understands what goes in bad comes out bad until you figure it out, and then you got to change it.
And you fix it. And I think our goal is to fix it. The other thing that, you know, Chief Gray actually brought this up, and I want to give him credit for this, but updating and getting this information correct only helps our 911 call center and our first responders. You respond to a fire differently if you know that it is a single-family ranch than a multi-fourplex. And so he brought that up, is this data is really going to help us from our 911 center so that the appropriate resources are also going to be dispatched to that area when that occurs. And so I think that's another part of this of, it is a good thing to clean up your data, no matter where it comes from and no matter how it comes out. It's a good thing to get that clean and get that accurate, because that's only going to help our first responders at the end of the day.
Jill, am I correct in saying that the county is, once this data is clean, we're going to have a database that's going to show this moving forward? We're not going to rely on other data. It's going to be relative to 911 and the fee if we move forward. Is that correct? We're going to
Yes.
have our own?
Yes.
We're working on an interactive map right now, just like the zoning maps are. That'll be just 911.
Okay.
I mean, so that way you can go in and click on that parcel and you actually know. That way, when new constructions also come in, that we'll collect that data from building permits. Be the same way, and it'll be put in correctly.
And I think the changes that we've made since this project began, even in how we are sharing our GIS information and our zoning information, our map data, has already helped 911 tremendously. But I also think that that also cleans up some of this process. When you're on the same system and you have all your zoning and all your things in the same database so that you can look at it the same, you're not relying on all these different external sources coming together. And this is the first time that we've used this information for this purpose, but it's the first time that you know, the PVA or anyone else has tried to export it for this purpose too. So I think that you're exactly right. We're trying to put it into a database where it is specific for 911 classification, and then we can update it. We hope to have that interactive map by the end of next week. It may be sooner than that, so that any individual citizen could type in their address and they could type in 101 West Main Street and say, hey, it is this many, they have it on record as this many square feet. It means my 911 fee classification is this, and this is what my 911 annual 911 contribution will be for the year. Does that help with zoning? The other most frequently asked question, I'm going to say, well, this probably varies a little bit, but I pay a fee on my cell phone, so why should I pay this fee? Yes, you do pay a 70-cent fee on your cell phone. That is if you ever look at your cell phone bill, it is a state 911 fee. So that is determined by the state, it's collected by the state, and it goes to the state. That is a very big misconception that, hey, this is on top of that. Now, the state 911 board, they do allow us to apply for grants, which we do regularly. The fiscal court knows we just applied for one and received one at our last court meeting to update technology. We're very proactive. Wendy and her team is always proactive in making sure we're getting access to those funds as much as we can, but that is a state 911 fee. It is not a local fee.
So what is the percentage of that fee that comes back to us?
It's about 30%.
In our budget, it's $450,000 comes, which is calculated in this financial model.
So it varies.
So it's not, you know, some people call it double taxing. It's not. I mean, we've figured that in as a revenue, so.
So it's I think, it's about 30 cents. I shouldn't have said 30%, but 30 cents. I think it's.
And it's safe to say too that it's even though you budget that amount, you're not guaranteed that amount. I mean, people don't understand that what you budget in a line is a projection versus what you're actually going to get. You may get more, or you quite possibly could get less. So you have to budget based on a projection. So that's, you know,
We
just want
budget,
to clarify.
when we budget, I think you all know this, but when we budget from actual revenues or expenditures from previous year.
Right.
Is how we budget.
So and I don't want to put Wendy on the spot, but Wendy, would you care to share what that 911 fee, what we utilize that for, so people can understand that?
I am sure she's prepared to answer every question there is about
I'm
911.
sure she is too, and I'm thankful that she can.
Yes, so when that comes in, that is mandated actually by a KRS. So there are only certain things that you can get in your 911 center for those things. As I said, our revenue from that is about $350,000. It was even less than that. Now they do pre-tax on some of the prepaid phones because they would get those phones and then not have the funds coming in. So that can only be used for personnel, which we could technically use it for all of our personnel, and it would nowhere reach what we need to pay for 911 dispatchers. You can use that for upgrading your GIS, because that is how we collect the data and get everybody where they need to go, so you can use it for GIS purposes. You can also use it for training. You can use that fee for, there's just a list, and there's a KRS online, and I don't care to share that, and Jill may even have it in her paperwork, because usually I can quote it off pretty good, but that's what we based all of that on. So all of that is based on that particular thing. Now, one of the also misconceptions is just because you're sitting in this room and you have a cell phone and you're paying 70 cents, you may not be paying it to Madison County, but you will gladly use it when you're in Madison County to call their 911 center. So for instance, I know my parents, when they were living, their cell phone was on one of my dad's sister's bills. So their 70 cents went to Lexington because that's where they purchased their phones and that's where they got them at. So a lot of times if you have EKU, Berea College, a lot of people that come in transit here during the day and work. So your 70 cents may not even be what we're collecting the fee to come back on. You may be paying 70 cents somewhere in the state, but that might be going to another county. But that's just how it's set up, and that's just, the best way they can do it. But there is a KRS, and even with this new fee that's on, there's still a KRS that mandates what can and cannot be spent on. So for instance, we are a 911 center, but we're also emergency communications. So we also have to have the ability to talk to the first responders, and we have CAD, and we like to send them that data, and we get that information out, and the law enforcement's running tags. The fire department is looking at hydrants. Well, some of those things can't be paid for specifically for the 911 fee because it's not part of the PSAP, Public Safety Answering Point, because that's mainly what it's for, is to bring those phone calls in. So there's certain servers and data and things like that that do not get paid for with that state 911 fee. They're not going to pay for that data, so then you have to bring in those other allocations for it. So it's a little, it's complicated, even though it's not, because when you pick up 911, you call, you're going to get a response, and we're going to get that right responder to you as quickly as we can, and we're going to ask the information. But when you break down the payment of it, it's just like at home. There's, you have certain things that come in that pay this, and you have certain things that come in and pay that, and we're in the same boat.
Wendy, I've got a question.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
How many 911 centers are there in the county?
There's one that is a certified PSAP. So what that means is the 911 landlines and the 911 cell phones only come to one PSAP, and that is us at Madison County.
Okay. And can you identify the top 2 or 3 sources of your calls? In other words, do most of them come from the county, Berea, Richmond, EKU? Where does the majority of your 911 calls come from?
Based on our data, it just depends on if you do it from 911 calls or actual calls for service, but it's kind of a lot. The city of Richmond has quite substantially more a lot of times, just because there's more people in there during the day working and transiting and transitioning back and forth, and then Berea and the county would be close second. I think the county may be close second just because fire does a lot of things and we enter a lot of calls for them, such as controlled burns and things like that. But a
Thank
big
you.
response. You're welcome.
Wendy, how does the state, or I guess maybe not how, but what proportion of the 911 fee that the state gets, can they capture the entire state? I mean, how could they determine
Who
who's
gets
here?
what?
Yeah, or who's actually
The cell phone
here?
carriers have to send that information back to the state. And so state legislation handles that with all the cell phone carriers. And then the cell phone carriers all pay into the state, and they're the collector of that fee. Then they keep part of that fee because it's their administrative fee for administering that grant out. So that 70 cents for each thing goes in. But it's mandated, just like if we had a fee on landlines, then they know based on that landline and that emergency routing number that it would come to us, and that's how we collected those fees. But it's through the phone carriers, so they work with them on that. So the state collects it from the cell phone carriers. Then they base on those cell phone carriers that reported from each area what gets back to you, and that just is usually about 29 or 30 cents of the 70 comes back to you. So that's how we come up with the 350,000. And then there were 120 PSAPs within the county, but actually a lot of PSAPs are merging and becoming regional PSAPs to bring in that revenue stream together to basically do a lot more as you set with all of your other counties that boundary you. So I think now, last count, I think there's 116 PSAPs, so that money's divided between those 116. And then when we go to grants, the grants are competitive grants, so just because you put in for the grant doesn't mean you get it. Again, all your documentation has to support that you're not spending the money on mobile data terminals. It has to support that you're not spending them, say, the sheriff's portable radio that he has on him. Like the 911 fee can't be used for that. It can be used for the infrastructure that we can talk and dispatch the call out, but we can't pay for anything on their end. And so that's how it kind of fluctuates.
I guess where I'm trying to get to is why can't the county put a 911 fee on a cell phone and that be,
You maybe could if you could get it through state legislation, and we have a lot of trouble even raising that fee because 70 cents and us only getting 29 at every PSAP across, because the majority of our calls are 911 cell phone calls, but that would take lobbying, and you're competing with the lobbyist of, you're competing with the AT&T and the Windstreams of the world.
and that's what I want people to
But
understand.
very much good luck, because the state 911 board and a large group of us directors that's been doing this for a long time, we try to go up there. We've had several conversations. When 911 goes to Frankfurt, when 911 goes to Washington, those are some of the things we push, and that's just something that, I mean, you're fighting people a lot bigger company.
But if we could get it done at the state level, and of course, pretty much everything we do is mandated by the state.
Yes.
If it could be raised to $1, $1.25, whatever per month over there, it would be a tremendous asset because that's where your calls are coming from.
Yes, from the cell phone calls, yes, absolutely.
But we can't do that, can we?
No, we cannot.
Okay.
But we're still trying, and the 911
And we're
groups
not gonna
try,
quit
but
trying.
no, we won't quit trying, but it's not.
Now, the reason I say that is that is a large question that all of us have gotten is why not cell phones? And, I mean, we would love to be able to do this on cell phones. As we had conversations earlier, you know, we're looking at 38,700 and something parcels. If we could expand that and spread out the fee collection to roughly 90,000 people, probably more.
Well, it would be bills, because it's per bill. It's,
Right, I got you. But, I mean, I would imagine there's not many, even kids
Yes,
now
everybody
have
has-
cell phones.
yes.
I mean, everybody has one. So
my
I'm
grandson's 7, yes, he can.
Right,
he
so
can
I'm thinking
text.
of the population. You're basically spreading this fee out on your population, which, you know, that's the goal, is to get there, you know, to paying this fee instead of, you know, one person paying it for everybody. So that's the reason why I wanted you to.
Yes, and a lot of
clarify
the
that.
state fee goes towards state mandates. For instance, with that state fee, that's how they do all the studies and all the mandates that we be GIS compliant, that we make Next Gen 911, that everybody will have a certain date that your text to 911, and you have a certain date that your data has to be in. And if your GIS data is not collected properly and your reports are not submitted properly, then even if you're a certified PSAP, they can uncertify you, and then you would not get those funds. But in order to get there, it takes oftentimes more than what you bring in revenue-wise from them to keep those standards up. I mean, it's a lot, especially for us before when we had 3 GIS departments, and then if one GIS had the information correctly and it was submitted, then another one might not. And now collectively, we're doing a lot better over the years, bringing some of that together and working with Richmond and Berea and the county on that GIS. And so Austin's done a great job coordinating with them. And also EKU. You know, that's another area that they have their own GIS, so that's another tackle. And for Next Gen 911, there's still so much to do, because not only are you texting 911 and we know your location, there's a standard in 2025 and 2026 that they want to know if you're calling from Baptist Health. They want to know what floor you're on in Baptist Health, and they want to know what room you're in Baptist Health. Well, we're mandated to make our GIS and our information and get the hardware and software to do that, but we only collect $350,000 from them. So
And I would imagine to do that is a tremendous cost.
it's a tremendous cost, and then that's not counting some of the stuff that the GIS does on the back end that we're not necessarily handing out to each of those agencies for their GIS near enough to be out collecting that data and those points. And then all the times that we sit down and with Next Gen 911, a lot of people are like, why do we have vacant property? There might not be anything on it. Well, there might be a barn, or there might be a pond or a waterway. Well, Next Gen 911, all of that has to be documented and have a technical geocoded address, even though it might not be the address you respond to. So if you have a missing child who's autistic, and a lot of times they're drawn toward water, then you would want to be able to geo-point that water and then give that to your responders to respond, to start looking in those areas and those kind of things. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's not as simple as, oh, they're taking your call and they're going to hang up and send you. There's just a lot of technology, and that technology cost.
Yeah. And not to drag this on any
you're
farther,
fine.
but you and I have had this conversation as well, even in addressing, depending on where you're getting your data, it determines where you end up. I mean,
Yes.
we've had issues where names of roads are the same in Rockcastle County as they are in Berea, and both of them have Berea addresses.
Yes.
But they are not the same location,
not the
even
same
though
location.
Google might take you to Rockcastle when you really want to go somewhere in Madison. I mean, that's, so with your data, if they use your data, then they will end up in the right place
Yes.
versus, Google Maps, which anybody can update Google Maps.
Yes, and a lot of times, for instance, we had a medical call not long ago onto a certain street, and they were passed up, and they were like, well, the ambulances passed us up, so we rerouted them, and then we told them where to go and which house, and then which mailbox, because we do have pictometry, and that's another application that we use in the dispatchers zooming in to get all the things, what the driveway looks like and those kind of things. And they were like, well, when you Google, she said, I didn't think to tell you, but when you Google, it automatically takes you like 4 houses below us. So now we've made a premise note to that if you're using Google to get there on the ambulance or wherever you're going, or even with our data, that, it might want to take you here or it might want to take you there. So there's a lot to it, especially. And then we submit that change to Google, but we have no control if Google's going to change that or not. Yeah. I'm
Thank
sure
you.
they get, you're welcome.
Thanks, Wendy. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Jim?
You might
So-
as well stay right there.
Yeah, you might should sit here.
I could talk all day. I don't know how much time you all have. This is my wheelhouse.
We've got all day.
So the other question that has come up frequently is why a new 911 fee? And so we've talked about this last week, but this is not a new fee. This is really an update to the fee structure. Since the early 90s, Madison County, as a totality, Richmond, Berea, and Madison County has had a landline fee. That landline fee has traditionally been $3.50, which is $42 per year.
Per landline.
Per landline, yes. So $42 per year. So if you have, it's up to 25 lines. So if you were a business or a Baptist Health, we'll use them as an example, that back in the day when they had 70 lines, that was 42 times 70. So,
42
or up times
42 times
25,
25,
but
yeah.
not 70. That's what I was getting at. So, so this method obviously no longer meets the needs. I know we've talked about it till we're blue in the face. I've not had a landline since 2006. I know many of you are in the same situation. So technically, when I informed my husband that we should have been paying $42 every year since 2006, he changed his conversation a little bit. But obviously, this method no longer meets the needs of the 911 center, no longer meets the needs of our community because landlines don't exist. This has been subsidized for many years through CSEP funding because it was such an important, 911 has been such an important part of ensuring we get responders to an emergency, whether that be a chemical emergency or another emergency, that the federal funds have subsidized what we were missing there as landlines decreased.
Which leads into the third question that's on here, really,
Yep.
right?
So all 3 governments established and voted for this structure change. It wasn't just a fee created and imposed by the fiscal court members. There was a
Let's
task.
ask the question, Jill, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but the question is, why didn't you plan or implement this change sooner, right? Well,
So-
you're not gonna charge a fee until you need the fee.
And I think the decision by all local governments had been that as long as we can get the federal dollars to subsidize this and pay for things, we don't want to change that and pass that along. I don't think we wanted to collect money that wasn't needed, that was being a revenue source otherwise. The fiscal court wasn't needing that from citizens at that point, but now as the federal funding does go away, it is required the structure. And so that kind of goes into the next conversation, which is about the timeline. And Wendy is a great record keeper, as you want your 911 director to be, and so she pulled out her binder from 2008. And so there's probably not many local elected officials that were here then, but in 2008, these conversations between all three local governments started about, hey, at some point, landlines are decreasing. We're going to have to change this mechanism of funding. And so that has continuously happened and been evaluated over the years. I think in 2015, it was revisited a little bit more and looking at putting that data together. And then the most proactive step, as we became closer and closer to the end of CSEP, we realized, hey, we're a couple years out now. We've got to make a change. And so in 2023, September of 2023, the Fiscal Court and both cities formed a task force called the Post-CSEP Task Force, if you all remember, to charge a group of individuals who are users and knowers and how these systems operate and what is needed to put together a proposed structure and a recommendation. So that happened in September. They met from September, probably for 18 months, like at least monthly, maybe every other week in a lot of times, and even weekly at some times, and presented a plan to a joint government meeting in March of 2024. At that time, there was a lot of feedback. We got feedback from citizens. We got feedback from local businesses. We got feedback from elected officials from that meeting. There was a few things that came out of that meeting that were definitely, I guess, good ideas and tasks that needed to come away from that. And one of them was, hey, is it possible for us to extend this and not make the structure change for a year so that you have this year for people to plan, for people to know about it, to communicate about it, for people to prepare. And you all, the fiscal court members will know that, remember that very well. We had work sessions, had the task force is still meeting. The task force members had representatives from all three governments. They were taking that information back to their local governments to be able to say, hey, here's the conversations that's happening and what changes are being recommended, one of which, again, was making sure that we had a year to plan for that. Resolutions were passed by both both cities, and then based on that, a formulation of the ordinance was developed, which was then had 2 readings and passed here at the Fiscal Court. So I think that has been a long process. Some of the things, the other citizen and business feedback that came out of specifically that initial proposal from the task force to the 3 local governments, one in particular was related to contingent or contiguous properties. We've had people here that we've helped and that are still, if you have a contiguous property, I live on a property and I own the parcel next to it because it used to be someone else's or it was divided at one point and I own both of them. I wish I could remember the lady's name who actually said, hey, what about this? And we're like, you know what? That's not something that the task force had necessarily addressed, but it's something that is going to be addressed in the ordinance and has been. Another having to do with that is the ordinance definitely addresses if I'm currently paying a landline fee, and I've paid it for all of 2025, and that's going to go away in December 31st of 2025. That landline fee will go away. So you shouldn't have to pay a land use fee and a landline fee. So that will definitely be credited. That was something that came out of some of those work sessions. Another thing that came out of the work sessions was the initial proposal was a little bit more of a by door or flat fee structure, which kind of goes into I guess my
Next question.
next question. Implementing a flat rate 911 fee for all properties, regardless of size, use, or occupancy, was really just determined not to be fair and equitable method of funding 911. It fails to take into account the varying levels of risk, the service needs, the potential demand. As we kind of mentioned earlier, it's unreasonable to expect that a resident that's living in a modest mobile home that pays the same 911 fee as a 10-bedroom house where you have a greater risk, but you also have a greater occupancy load. And I think that, when you look at it from a life safety standpoint for planning and zoning, I think, Judge, you have to correct me, is it 2.5 per bedroom? How many people per bedroom? I wish Bert was here. That you account for about 2 people per bedroom in any housing.
Yeah, the number.
The number of people that would live in that house would be 2 per bedroom. So if you have 10 bedrooms, theoretically, 20 people could live in that house. If you have 2 bedrooms, theoretically, 4 people could safely live in that house. And so I think that goes into looking at, hey, the structure needs to account for those factors. The same applies to the commercial sector, expecting a single-family home to pay the same as Walmart. And we use Walmart as an example, not to bash Walmart, but you have a lot of people coming and going from Walmart every single day. I don't know what their customer count is, but I'm going to say it's pretty high. They have a lot of square footage. I've never driven past Walmart and not seen police, fire, or EMS there. And I think our police, fire, and EMS would tell you that rarely is there someone not there. That's not the same as having Subway or Straight from Texas Barbecue on Water Street down here, that the same demand is not there from a commercial standpoint. So if you have 250,000 square feet and you have 2,500 square feet, should we really treat them exactly the same? So I think that the flat fee disregards the proportional risk and demand for each property places on the 911 system, and I think that's why the methodology that was chosen the way it was. Using square footage as the basis is much more balanced and justified, and it aligns the fee structure with the logical risk, and who is using it. The other part of this is, looking at why does each classification differ. And so one of the things that happened after the initial presentation, and you all will remember this, is, hey, we want to make decisions based on the data that we have, and we want to make decisions based on what is fair. Looking at the 911 call data, as Wendy had mentioned, and dividing that out by the zoning classification. And so we all have probably some assumptions that maybe a certain that single-family homes get the most 911 calls. And I bet Chris is going to be great and put this up on the screen for me. And those call zoning types, that is not necessarily the case. So we broke down the calls that are coming into 911 by those zoning classifications, so we could be fair. And so if you look, single family and farm, and so I'm gonna pause there and say single family and farm is a single classification, because your classification says that does not mean you live on a farm, and it does not mean that, it just means those are calculated on the same rate based on the zoning classification. But so you can see here the number of calls that are coming in or the calls for service for those zoning types, and then the percentage, and then the budget value makeup. And so that is exactly how you got to that number, is looking at, hey, here's the calls, who's receiving the most calls. And it was largely commercial businesses, which when we all think about it, we would expect. Came into the conversation thinking, oh, well, there's more single-family homes, so there are going to be more calls, but the number of calls for service. And I think we've had a lot of great conversations with citizens regarding that, is because they have to have a call for service at Kroger or Walmart or Meijer every third hour. As single-family residents, do you want to bear the same cost? And I think that is how that model was, the logic that was developed in that model. Does that make sense? I know I'm doing a lot of talking, so.
No, you're doing good.
So I think that is, the different classifications has definitely been that's been a conversation about where that information came from, and that's how this has been developed even further. There have been a conversation about the educational entities and the other elements, and so you can actually see on that as well, that the number of calls that are going to those educational institutions and what that represents for them as well, even though they may be tax exempt traditionally. So the next question was, why do the rates differ for different classifications? And we kind of addressed that just a little bit about calls for service data and the call type. And that was divided by, again, like the required 32% of the budget for a single family, and that's how you get to that rate number.
And so, to clarify, when you're trying to reach what 911 costs, and so you're dividing it by the percentage of what each entity uses. So it's not just a number that we came up with. So it's, you're trying to obtain what 911 costs, and that's it. You're not trying to do anything else. So that's how you divide it out and determine what each entity pays on the rate.
Yeah, each classification type. And so one of the questions was, I think I've already addressed this, but I'm going to come back to it just in case, is why were some 911 classifications incorrect on your notification that you may have received in the mail. And that goes back to the zoning of it. You may live in a single family home, and I keep dwelling on this because I think this is the number one thing that we've heard, and I think it's the number one thing that's important for people to know and realize, that when you are dealing with data, and we want to make data-driven decisions, we want to be a efficient government that makes those kind of decisions. When you're dealing with data, you're also at the mercy of the data, as Magistrate Lockmuller said, and so part of this is getting that information right, and so that you may have been labeled as multifamily, and you let us know that you're not multifamily, you will be transitioned to the single family rate when that's verified. We have had a team of people who've gone through and looked up, single family house, yep, it's obviously a single family house, and we're going to switch that to single family. But this is how we know to make those changes for this purpose, but also for our first responder purposes. Square footage is something else that we have talked a lot about. My square footage is incorrect, or how did you come up with the square footage? And so obviously we don't hold the keys to everyone's house and know exactly what everyone's home is, but the PVA does have an element of square footage database that they use as a portion of how they do assessments. Now, it's not the only thing when the PVA makes an assessment, but they have that square footage, and they have total square footage. If you go to the PVA database, there is a living square footage, there is a basement square footage, there is a finished basement square footage, there is a garage square footage, which makes a total square footage. The intent of the ordinance was to only include improved square footage. So that would mean your living square footage, any portion of your basement that may be finished. If it's all finished, it would include everything. If it's not all finished, it wouldn't include everything. And so when we pulled all that information over, we pulled total square footage. And we should not have pulled total square footage. We should have only pulled improved square footage, which would be your finished living square footage, as well as any attached garages that are improved. And meaning, it has electrical, it has drywall, it has a garage door opener. I've told a lot of citizens, I love hitting that button in the winter that opens and closes that garage for me. And so obviously that has electrical, it has lights, it has those things that could catch on fire, but also it is an improved space. It's not just a raw space. And so you may have a basement that's a raw space. There's studs, there's no improvements there, but your garage could have improvements. And so if it does have improvements, that would be calculated into the total square footage. Does that make sense? So on the heels of that, what has been done to correct the issue? We've already worked with the PVA office. They responded incredibly quick when we realized that the total square footage had been pulled over to obtain the finished square footage. We've already corrected that on all 39,000+ parcels. So likely, if you call us or you get on the tool that we're going to have online, you're going to open it up and say, yes, it says this is what is going to be the improved square footage. We have made that correction. Now, it hasn't been incorrect on everyone, because some of us may have a finished basement that is included our total square footage. Some of us may not have a basement. Most of the issues that we ran into were partially finished basement issues. So maybe 2/3 of it or half of it's finished, and then your total square footage pulled over. If you see something that is incorrect on your square footage, as I mentioned, the PVA doesn't use square footage as a total basis, and so they have a lot of that data, but they don't utilize a lot of that data always. So if it's incorrect, we want to get that correct, and Billy and his team want it to be correct as well. So this is an opportunity. If something is incorrect and you're like, nope, this is not right, we can get that and help to correct their database as we're correcting the issues that we have. And you can do that through the appeal process, through the correction process, to ensure that we get it right. We have, had a lot of people that have, here's my Zillow listing, here's my Realtor.com listing, and we've seen a lot of situations where they even differ. It may be one on one and one on the other. We've had people that said, hey, here's my floor plans, and they've submitted their floor plans because maybe what we had on file was incorrect, and that's how we get that information corrected. Largely, Zillow and Realtor.com do not count garages in any form or fashion as square footage. So the biggest discrepancy has been, hey, you have extra 450 square feet. And almost every time we know that that's going to be a garage, because that's about the standard 2-car garage, I have learned in the last couple of weeks. But that is largely where the difference is for a lot of people. And we've seen, there's been typos, there's been a couple of, weird things like that. But when you're looking at 39,000+ parcels, you would expect a little bit, a typo or a fat finger here or there, I would anticipate. So
No, just to clarify, we're not using Zillow and that data. I know there's some speculation that that's where the data came from, but you're just using that as an example.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
We're not using that data.
No, we pulled all of our square footage data from the PVA and what they have on file. And again, the discrepancy is generally improved square footage versus total square footage. And so there are some mistakes and issues. And again, that's why we want to get it right. That's why we send out the information, is so that you can tell us, this doesn't look right, and we've got time to make those changes. And I think Judge Taylor mentioned this. We will have a system where you can look up your own in the next, I'm going to say few days, but they're probably going to make some loud noises in the IT department. So I would say in the next couple of weeks for sure.
Jill, this one thing, Judge, would it be all right if she's went over a lot of stuff, and Wendy shared a lot of stuff? Would it be all right if we allow them, the public, to make some comments based on what we've talked about already, and give Jill a little break?
Sure.
Catch your breath.
The only thing I would ask, if anybody would like to ask a question or something, I'd just like you to come up to the mic, because we are recording this, and we wanted to have a conversation.
You're first.
Yeah, but,
You don't
hey,
hear
Eric,
this mic.
hey, Eric, I need you to come to the mic, though, so everybody can hear.
She said that they were divided out into percentages based on call data. I just don't know what those percentages are. I just didn't know if you could answer that.
So
Oh, no, like percentage, so single family is taxed at this rate, multifamily at this rate.
you don't know the rate, or you don't know the percentage? Because the percentage is going to be the 32.51%.
Yep.
But the rate, like for single family, Chris is on it, I'm sure. For single family, it's 0.016. For multifamily, it's going to be 0.05 or 65. Well, I'm not going to read them to you because you seem like a smart guy.
I can get it. The single family had been double the cost of multifamily, and I just didn't know if they were taxed the same or less or more.
They're at a different rate, so obviously for single family, it's going to be
Budget amount. Okay.
yes,
So
yeah,
1.5, 1.1.
percent of the budget.
Got
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah, good question, Eric. Thank you. Yes, ma'am, or yes, sir. Hey, since I said ma'am, come on up, sir.
That's okay, you can go first.
No, it's all right, come ahead.
I guess what I don't understand is
Can we get your names first, please?
Glenda Dryden. I don't understand why this is so difficult. For years, it was on landline, 1 fee a year on the landline. So explain to me why we're doing square footage instead of just doing 1 fee a year on residences or property. I mean, that looks like that would have been so simple to do as opposed to this mess, and it's a mess. I just like to know why.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. I think we actually, you came.
Answered that before she came.
Yeah.
I came late, yeah.
We answered that before you came late, but I'll let Jill
Okay.
answer that again. Yes, ma'am.
They're going to make me go to the microphone, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
They're going to make
That's
me, I
perfect. All right. I
promise.
mean, I'm just curious as to why we would have done that.
So I think that the logic in that is
There's
that.
no logic in that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, I'm sorry. I won't say anything else.
That everyone is, the risk, the inherent risk of all residents and all properties are not the same. So if you live in a 10-bedroom home, single-family home,
Jill, let's call that a 4-bedroom, because people are going to say there's not a 10-bedroom. Just,
Might be.
there may
that'd
be,
Way out here.
yeah.
Let's go with 4
let's
bedroom.
4-bedroom.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That way that people don't say, well, that lady don't know what she's talking about, because that will come up.
Or Village, Florist, and Walmart.
Yeah,
They're-
so
they're-
we'll
yeah.
use commercial, that's even better. So Walmart has maybe 250,000 square feet, I'm not sure the number offhand. The risk and the resources and the number of calls for service at Walmart is much different. They may have 10,000 people that walk through their doors every single day. Do you think they should pay the same as the 1-bedroom, 974 square foot house that lives, or that is in downtown Richmond? And the risk is not the same for the number of people that would make that call for service, nor the service that would be needed to provide a resource for Walmart. And I think that's the logic. I know that everybody's gonna have a different opinion and maybe have a different set of ideals on that everything is the same. But when we look at calls for service and we look at what resources have to be used to fairly justify, if you're paying $42 and Walmart's paying $42, is that fair? And we want to be as fair as we can to our citizens.
I think also too, that $42 is not a real number. When you look at dividing, and I used the data from the presentation, which was 38,752 parcels. That went up to 39. I
A
mean,
little over 30.
so if you did a flat rate, I think the judge did the math.
$103.
103.
Yeah.
So everybody would pay $103.
But now that's different than when it was a landline.
Yes, so you would,
Different today than it was when they had landlines.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so $42 would have been the fee with landlines. And so if we did a flat rate, it would be $102 per parcel.
Okay. Well, that explains that. Thank you.
Edwin, sure, absolutely.
But this gentleman here,
Oh, I'm sorry, Edwin. I'm sorry, Edwin. I try to be fair. That guy was next. I got you next, buddy.
My name's Adam Arvin, and I've been a resident in Madison County for over 45 years. And my question is, where these numbers come up from homes to this. I own a little commercial business I bought a little over a year ago. You know, and you struggle, you work all your life, and you try and pay for this stuff. And then you get this surprise in the mail, $1,047. You know, here I am. I got 2 little units rented. One of them's to a little Mexican church, and it's only bringing me in $375 a month. So do the math on that. That's 3 months of my rent going to me trying to survive. Plus I furnish all the utilities. I mean, I'm good for trying to help and give my part to 911, but there ought to be a place where this is balanced out a little bit better than throwing it all at one person, you know. Because, you know, people struggle to try to make it, we pay our taxes, we do what's right, and like, give people a fair shake in this thing, you know. Make it happen, but don't try to make an example out of somebody who's trying to survive. If this meeting would have been presented to the county more than what it was, this room would be filled with people, I know. Because I just got a glimpse of it at church last night. So I showed up, and that's all I got to say. I'm for helping 911, not against it at all. But these figures here really tap into people trying to make a living and pay for what they bought. But, you know, maybe you might buy something. You turn around and half your year's rent, 3 months of your rent's gone, plus you furnish utilities. I mean, we got to give everybody a little break here. But that's all I have to say, you know. I thank you for your time.
Where's your building? Is it in the city limits or
It's in the city limits,
of Richmond or Brea?
Richmond. It's
Okay.
on the corner of Pin Oak and Main Street.
So one thing I want to say here is that you know, there's 3 governments involved in this, and we're putting Richmond's fee on our bill, and so Richmond's governing body can make a decision. Brea is the same way. This is a joint venture. The cities both passed resolutions prior to the county passing this ordinance. We are really acting as the collection agency of this 911 fee. And so we invited the elected officials, we invited the task force members from all governments here today,
Yeah, well, I emailed and made a response, you know, on this, and I got a call back referring to my complaint. And I said, why wasn't there a meeting to let people know what was going on and what was going to happen? And even when I got that phone call about my appeal, you never said nothing about this meeting going to happen 2 or 3 days later. I mean, the public needs to know, provided more information so you can show up and stand for what they believe, you know. That's
Well, sir, this meeting today was not specifically about this topic. We decided late last week, we had this meeting scheduled for what we voted on first, which was paying the claims and approving the transfers, and we decided to add it. Thursday, I think? Friday. We decided to add this topic to this so that we could have this conversation.
But I know the citizens of Madison County would like to be involved in it, is what I'm saying, you know.
And we're not going to not listen. So we're not going to not listen to their citizens. I mean, I imagine every one of these gentlemen here have been on the phone constantly with citizens. We're not going to listen to what you have to say. And we've heard what you've had to say today, and we'll continue to listen to what the public says.
No, we're happy when people come here, because people don't come here. They just get on social media. I would suggest to you, thank you for coming. I would also suggest, since the taxes are going to the city of Richmond, you may want to go to one of their commission meetings. I guess he wanted to hear that.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name's Edwin Luxon, and I want to say first that I talked to Reagan about a few days ago. He couldn't have tried to help me more with answering my questions than anybody, and I appreciate that, Reagan. But I want to say a couple of things that I know you all have. I talked to a couple of magistrates this morning before the meeting, and they gave me some reasons, and I understand those. But the main thing I'd like to ask is this, and I had one of the magistrates explain it to me, but I still don't understand it. There's 120 counties in Kentucky. There's one county in Kentucky, the way I understand it now, I Googled this, got some information. There's one county in Kentucky that is using the square foot tax basis. We would be the second. Am I correct on that?
I'm not sure.
I think I am, but I wouldn't tell you. I got some information. I Googled it just to find out. I've heard that.
Jill's saying there's at least 3, Edwin.
Okay, 3. There's 3 out of 120. Now, as I stand here, I think that common sense would tell us, and I was told by a gentleman here this morning, very nice to me, that there's reasons that some counties have not gone to square foot tax basis. But I still think that when there's 120 18 or 17 out of 120. It's hard to understand. They've made some decisions the same size. Oh, excuse me. They've made some decisions the same size as what we are here in our county. And there's different sizes. I understand that. But it makes me think that there's some reasons when 117 counties aren't using the square foot basis. Should we think about that? And the last thing I'd like to say is, I was told this morning that when I talked to the nice gentleman, that there's talking about the 38,000 plus parcels. And he mentioned to me that, the people that are low-wage income people, it's hard for them to come up with I think the figure I was given this morning, he said it didn't have to be perfect, but he said it was $139 or $40 a year. He said these people that are minimum wage, low income, 25, 30,000, whatever, it's hard for them to come up with $11 or $12 a month that's taken out of their income. And one thing I'd like to say this morning, there's people sitting in this room, they're paying anywhere from $50,000 to $80,000, and I don't know the exact figures, but I do know there's some sitting in this room that pay over $50,000. Now, do they make more money? Yes, they do. But don't think that it's not hard to come up with $50,000. It's very difficult. So I want to tell you all, I appreciate what you all do here. I wouldn't have your job for anything, but I do appreciate you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Edwin. Appreciate it. One thing I think we need to just sort of dissect that a little bit, just try to make sure that we're looking at it from the right lens. But there's not, Wendy, and this might be for you. There's not 117 counties that have a fee structure to pay a 911 fee. This is something that is, and help me with this, but this is something I think that's new. That's happening across the state.
It is happening as landlines go away across the state. Everybody's
all
being.
counties are having this, and cities are having this issue of funding 911. But there's only a few out of the 120 counties that have actually done something to create a mechanism to fund it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I know some of them, I've seen on social media a lot, people talk about Campbell County, I think. Campbell County, I believe, is, they have a flat fee on residents, then they have square footage on business or something. Is that correct?
That is correct for Campbell, yes. Some of the bigger counties, and not to be mean, we're kind of one of the bigger counties. So it's affecting everybody across the state, and everybody's dealing with it different. And there's a lot of ways to look at it, because even though there's 120 counties and there's 117 certified PSAPs, there's more PSAPs. There's more dispatch centers than that. Some people, one place will take in all the 911 calls and they might get transferred over, or a post might dispatch out for them, or a post might take their 911 calls and then just call that county for that to. In Madison County, we're a little bit unique because we have everybody together in one consolidated center. Some of the other counties looked at, some do electric meters, which, the task force, we got all the numbers for that. So then that would have been on your electric meter. Well, then we ran into there's more than one electric company, and then you have to go before all those boards and all the appeals for that. We ran into the same thing with water companies. You can put it, I think Estill County has theirs on a water fee and has for years. I seen it on my mom's. I was like, what's this? She's like, oh, that's the 911 fee. And I was like, when did they do it? She's like, honey, it's been on there for years. We pay it. So there's a lot of different ways you could do it, and I think the task force has done it. And as Jill said, I started this county in 2008, but when I started dispatch in 1998, from that day on, I've always heard this day is coming. CSEP's going away. And I think that's what gets into the muddy water of some of it is it's to fund 911, but funding 911 before did not have to fund the infrastructure for a radio system or the outdoor warning sirens or all the other things. So to come up with that funding and do it the way we're doing it, We did take model after some of the bigger counties and agencies that are trying it, but there are tons of different ways to do it, and you just have to find what works for you, because you could also look at, do you want to put it on a motor vehicle tax? That's also a fee that you could do as well, so I think coming up with a fee. But yes, there's tons of different ways to do it, but the task force was tasked with that, and we submitted numbers for all of those different avenues.
And so 3 of them, so how many, do we know how many counties across the state that have?
Roughly 80 have a 911 fee. When we presented the information back last year to Fiscal Court, some of those have actually even changed since then. I know Paducah and McCracken County last October, they transitioned to a model similar to ours from a landline as well. And I would say Paducah, McCracken County is probably somewhat similar. When you look at Kenton County, Campbell County, Boone County, but there's roughly 80 that have some sort of 911 fee structure, and they vary, whether it's, like Wendy said, water meters, electric meters. Hardin County I think they have a flat fee, and then business has a different rate. So there's a lot of different models and structures out there that people have determined work for those counties in the number of parcels and the number of citizens. I think that when we talk to the leadership in Kenton County, the model that they chose, which was a hybrid model, and a lot of what I think that our task force modeled after having conversations with them was even based on the number of parcels and the smaller entities and communities. When you go in northern Kentucky, there's a lot of little townships and cities, I guess you'll call them, in there that have consolidated 911 as well. And so those different models worked for those communities, and I think it's the makeup.
But the task force, I mean, had conversations with those counties, like saying what worked good, what worked bad, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, several conversations, lots of email exchanges, a lot of data, a lot of the information that we got to even, make the presentation and things. They shared their presentations, because it's a lengthy process to try to eliminate what is best. Is there a better solution? Maybe there is, maybe there's not. But I mean, we just done the best we could with the timeline we're given, and tried to make it as fair as possible for everyone to still get the service. Because at the end of the day, we at the center, it doesn't matter to us how your money comes in, as long as we can provide people in the seat to answer the phone and get you someone. But that's not a cheap task. And what we do is it's very expensive taking all the extra on. Like I say, a lot of things mandated, but they all do it differently. And as she said, a lot are changing. Some, even when they put it on the water fee, some even had their own county sue them just to make sure that they could do that and that it was legal. And so everything that we done, we looked at that also, like what's been challenged, what's went to the Kentucky Supreme Court, what can we do that we already know is proven. And then a lot of them, even though they do the fees, they wish they had structured a little differently, and we got that feedback. Of course, they have been doing the fee for a couple of years, so they don't want to go back and say, hey, we should have done it like, Madison County setting it up, because we're just looking at the data every year, and if there's a shift within a percent of calls going tremendously up or tremendously down, then the fee can automatically waiver within that as well. So,
if I remember correctly, when y'all presented this to us too, one of the things about an electric company or a utility company, I'll say, collecting the fee, wasn't there going to be like an administrative charge?
Yes.
Wasn't there an extra cost to our citizens if we went that model that would have created a higher?
Yes, we would have to anticipate even more to pay that revenue needed to pay them to collect the fee. Yes.
They would have charged some kind of admin fee of so much percentage, right?
Yes, yes. And that would be for each one of those entities, whatever their set admin fee would be.
Would have been, yeah.
So there's no fees in the way we're doing it now with our partners in Madison County. We're not charging them a fee because of this, right?
Not that I'm aware of. We're not
Not
charging a fee.
technically, I mean, the sheriff will
No,
collect a
the
fee.
sheriff's
will
collecting a
collect
fee.
it, but
Mhm.
but it
But-
still stays within the county.
It still stays within the county, yes.
Well, and I think that's pretty small.
Yeah.
I think that would be.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Wendy, appreciate it.
One of the things, Judge, that she mentioned there was the, putting a tax on the vehicles, and that wasn't fair either, because some
No.
people don't have a vehicle.
Some
Some
don't
people
have it
have
all.
2 vehicles.
Yes.
Some people have 3 vehicles. Somebody's got a boat. So, I mean, that wasn't a
And that's
fair
constantly
structure.
changing. I mean, it would be a nightmare. I couldn't even, I mean, and we looked at, but, I mean, we looked at all the options and we were like, okay, what would be best for our county? And then, you know, you run the data. And we've been running this data over and over. I mean, and we have the sheet since 2008. Chris and I could probably tell you what some of those were back in 2008 when we started running the data, like what the electric would have been then, what it would have been now. And people were like, well, you should have went on and put something in place. Well, even if we'd put it in place, we still would have had to do something to adjust that fee because what we're paying for today is still going to be almost, you know, a couple more $1 million than what we're going to pay for tomorrow when CSEP is gone because we're no longer going to be able to partner some of those projects that we didn't get grants for or that we are bringing in the infrastructure and the radios. You have no way in 2008 of knowing what that would cost today.
Well, and how do you go ahead and charge the constituents back
Yes.
then when you didn't need to,
When you
didn't
didn't need
have
to,
to?
exactly.
I mean, that's asinine.
I mean, you're running it right down, you know, right down to the wire of when you start collecting versus them going away. And it would have been unfair to have that fee coming in and set on it, not needing it, knowing CSEP's here and is paying that.
Can you talk a little bit about our annual operating expenses compared to other counties? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can, and we have our budgets, and we just done a budget with, not only do we do one with the state, then the county gets audited as well, and we just done our state audit. Basically, the biggest majority of ours is for personnel, and then computer hardware and software. I know a lot of people think there's a lot of fluff in the budget, but I really beg to differ. There's not a lot of fluff in the budget.
Well,
And if-
people,
And if
I've
there's
heard-
an area that someone thinks there is, I'd be glad to sit down and specifically go over that, because when we prepare the budget, we go in line by line, what our maintenance fees cost,
Last
what
year.
our contracts cost from the previous year. A lot of times, we'll do a built-in 3%, and sometimes that doesn't cover if that company ended up going up 10%, as the equipment comes in and things change. So there's not, I mean, everything that we do is budgeted in. I mean, we can't control the electric and the water, but we try to base them as best we can on the previous year, not knowing what's gonna come up, because we have all of those expenses too. It's not just a telephone line.
I think, you know, as we've had conversations with people, not to interrupt, Judge, but
No, you're good. No worries.
what we've tried to explain to folks is that the replacement cost and the hardware, software kind of cost is what's driving this expense. I know a lot of people have asked me, why is it so expensive? And I don't know if Chris would want to explain that.
Yeah,
or-
Chris may be better. This will be the first time that in doing the budget, this will be the first year that 911 is on taking some of the things that was here through EMA CSEP, such as the radio infrastructure, the outdoor warning sirens, and those kind of things. But going through the contracts with them, some things are prepaid for so long, some things are maintenanced out, and we tried to get that at a really good cost and set it in for so many years so we would know what that cost is. And then to project what you think the cost of redoing all this, for instance, when they just done this last upgrade for the radio infrastructure was about $20 million. So how do you it's kind of like at home, if you know you have a big expense that your AC unit's only going to last so long, about how much per annual year do you think you need to be putting back for that so you're not hit with the cost all at once? But it's a $20 million radio system, so how do you replace that radio system at that cost? And so these are the numbers, and so you'll see the radio operations. So that's all new to me, and I'm learning, so Chris might be able to answer some of those better than me, but
You might be the only one who can see it.
yeah, he might be the only one that can see it. It's too far away for even my readers to work.
Well, one thing I've heard, to people question is the 27, like 27 full-time employees. I think sometimes people don't realize that, our operations.
Even at 27, yes, so
We're 24/7 operation.
we're a 24/7 operation, and then we try to base that. And just because we have 27 full-time positions does not always mean we have 27 full-time people in there.
Right.
Like right now, we're open online. If anybody would like to apply, we would welcome you to come in and go through our process. A lot of times we are down because we are such a busy county. We do have a high call volume rate, and there is so much burnout comes a lot quicker than it used to when dispatchers came and those kind of things. So even though we have 27 full-time positions, it doesn't mean we always have 27 full-time people in there. But we do operate 4 shifts that rotate out. We like to have at least 4 per shift when we can, but a lot of times just with staffing, we do not. But our ultimate goal would be to have that and to add in. I'll let you explain that.
Yeah, and I think it's important when you look at this, Brian said it really well earlier, these are projections, right? we're doing our best to make sure these numbers are close. If you look at a comparison of Scott County, Georgetown, that has a radio system that matches exactly ours, they're paying anywhere from $580,000 to $600,000 a year in maintenance contracts. So you see ours at a modest $700,000 there. It does go up. That's in an attempt to not make sure we're too short in the coming years, but obviously this funding mechanism has been built to be based on the budget. So when we get to 27, 28, 29, those numbers may not be right. They're probably going to be lower, right? And the fee will be based on those lower amounts. So keep that in mind. But there is some speculation out there that it's inflated or whatever it may be. But you got to remember there's utility bills at all 9 of those tower sites. You can see there what we've, assessed that at. Tower inspections, you may say that's high, but those are based on the rates that we have been paying with some inflation costs because everything costs more today. Generator maintenance, there you see in that line 60 is AMK maintenance. That's actually something that we are currently in the process of negotiating with AMK, a new contract with them. The one they have today is what we will call the Cadillac. That's the favorite word to use when it comes to radio systems. It's a Cadillac maintenance system. CSEP paid for that for 30 years to have a body on site here every day for us to maintain the radio system. They site walk, they do all kinds of things. Moving forward, that's not the number that's in there. We can't afford that. We cannot justify having that expense, so we won't. But this $700,000 number is in line with what we expect it to be coming down to. Today, I think we pay $58,000 a month for that service. And just keep in mind, that's not parts. So if something on one of those tower sites breaks, that's not covered. We're paying somebody to climb that tower. We're paying for the part plus, a markup, all that stuff. And that's every time something happens on that site. Now, right now, it's under warranty, thankful for CSEP when they came in. And it was, we're covered for a couple of years more. But those costs are coming. We got to mow them. We got to weed them. We got tower site maintenance. The roofs leak. The air conditioners don't work. That's on there as well. And then you got to insure that equipment. That's probably something people don't think much about. All that equipment is very, very expensive. We've got a cost there to have that as well. Tower sites, and then the fuel and all those generators. There's batteries in those towers that have to be recycled and replaced every so often. So it's not inflated, it's projected would be the word I would use. Other than personnel, Wendy, that's probably the single biggest expense.
I guess too, not to interrupt, Judge, but not everybody is in the market for a 911 system. And so can you kind of talk about, as far as vendors, what's available? When you're looking at supply versus demand. So, not
Absolutely.
everybody in the community is looking to buy a 911 system.
Right, and the way this works is the radio system, when we awarded that contract, heck, it's been many, many years ago, and then was upgraded here just recently with CSEP dollars in the last 2 years, right? Harris has an authorized service center, and you have to have an authorized service center in order to have this work done. AMK Services is the one in this region. They are the only ones authorized to do work. There is another one in Kentucky that you could use, but they're actually assigned to lower western Kentucky, a Union County area over in there, and they come out of Tennessee as well. So for AMK, they are the Harris vendor. When we picked Harris as our provider, AMK was the vendor that was there. Same thing with our Solacom PSAP system. That's the actual where they pick up the phone and say, hello, 911, right? That's the equipment that does that. AK Services is the only one that provides that service in this area. Though these big vendors have these people they contract with to provide service in those areas. We don't get to choose that. Now, we get to choose the product, right?
Right.
And Solacom at the time was probably the most cost-efficient product that we had offered to us. Motorola is a big name when it comes to radios and 911 systems. And you know what comes with a big name, don't you? A big price. Yeah. This TCL TV or a Sony TV is cheaper than a Samsung TV, right? Because it's got Samsung written on it. It's the same thing. Motorola systems are more expensive because they're Motorola. And we did our due diligence when these platforms are selected to make sure we were picking what was appropriate for our community.
Thank
you. One thing I want to hit on real quick too is, because I don't know if I've heard people, really saying too much about a utility cost or a mowing expense or whatever, but some have said something about the life cycle replacement. In the budget, we have a life cycle replacement, and so part of this financial model is figuring in the life cycle of our system and putting money back to be able to replace it. However, the fiscal court, the city of Richmond City Bridge, first responders see fit at the end, right?
Correct.
But also in that, you've also figured in interest, so that funds will go into a sort of a capital capital line, I guess, that'll be invested. So there's been a annual percentage of return on investment from those funds that will help us
Correct. I applaud
replace
this.
it one day,
I
right?
applaud this body and I applaud that task force for having the foresight to do that. A lot of communities probably wouldn't have, and you're going to get 20 years down the road, and we're going to be coming knocking on the door asking for $25 million. You're going to bond it, you're going to pay interest, you're going to do whatever you want. So thankful that we had the foresight to do that. The $675,000 that is being put away, as he said, we put into that fund and earn interest. The dollar amount was chosen to get us to a point to have $25 million to refresh the system. CSEP just did it at 3 years ago's cost at about $22 million. So you take that into play, we're guessing $25 million is the number that we'll have to spend, right? The only kind of really good part about it is that CSEP paid for all the portables and mobile radios that officers carry. You have already learned this morning that the fee cannot pay for those radios. And when you start looking at the cost of this totality of the system, that subscriber unit, as we call it, is a lot of the cost. You, as the government, won't have to absorb all of it. Now the county's going to have to absorb fire, sheriff, jail, and those folks. And I think there'll be some different decisions made when we get to that point. Do you have to carry the XL95 that's a $5,000 radio? No, this system is a P25 compliant system. We could choose a different radio that doesn't have the same features, doesn't have the same capabilities. All of those things can be made. This body here did a great job of maximizing to the very, literally the very last minute of putting this radio system in on CSEP's dollar. We have gotten the maximum lifespan out of this current radio system that we can get. We were to the wire, like knocking on our door, like, what are you doing? You haven't finished, that we were so late in the process. That was good fortitude on this board to get to that point so that we would be in the longest period we can. But the problem is that a lot of this equipment has 5-year life cycles, and that's built into this. Year 5, this has to be replaced. Year 7, these have to be. Year 15, this, right? And it just keeps compounding. And then you get to year 20, and you guys know this government doesn't move fast. We get to year 20, we're going to start talking about a new radio system for a 25-year system because it's going to take us 5 years to get to that point. It's just the way it is. The PSAP equipment, we've gotten 2 grants, and just from that state 911 tax we talked about on cell phones, we've gotten 2 to help replace those pieces of equipment, and CSAP originally paid for it to begin with. We're constantly looking at systems and solutions that will reduce this cost. And again, the model was built so that when those costs fall, the fee falls. That was one of the things that was really important, to the task force, was that don't just pick a number and collect money to collect money. Let's collect money that we need. So if we get down the road in this radio system and we negotiate a really good deal, that's going to be reflected in the fee that you pay because it'll automatically adjust because each portion of those classifications are paying their portion of the total budget, right? And as that falls, the rate per square footage falls, and then your bill falls. Now, we get into this all the time. You could have said, we just would include basements. Well, what would you have had to have done to get the money? You just would have made it more money per square foot, right? So we can't get bogged down in this square footage number that kind of convolutes things because at the end of the day, as prices fall or we find cost efficiencies, those are going right back to the citizens by reducing the cost per square foot.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Can I ask you to repeat something? That this is not the Cadillac that the federal government's been paying for. Reagan always says to try to rather spread that cost over the country for something in Madison County versus the citizens of Madison County. That's what we've been doing since I said the other day I was in middle school.
Correct.
And I'm not been out a couple of years.
The system itself, the radio system itself.
This is what we need.
Correct.
For a county of our size. It's not the CSEP Cadillac.
The system itself is not a Cadillac. The system itself is the correct system for this, and people are way smarter than me, third-party federal contractors that came in here and helped us do all that and design it, right? The system is not a Cadillac. The maintenance program that we had on it was absolutely the Cadillac because that's what CSEP required. That's why there's, at one point, 96 outdoor warning sirens because they required to have 3 pointing in any given direction, right, just in case one of them failed. So they wanted a radio system where there was somebody here every day. His name's George, and he walks a tower site every day, or he's in dispatch in Wendy's people. He's doing something every day. That's not a cost that we're going to do ourselves. That'd be ludicrous, So this $700,000 number is not inflated. It's going to be, projected.
Yeah.
And it may be a little cheaper, and next year that rate maybe can fall, but heck, we'll turn around and next thing we'll know, utility bills will be $90,000 instead of 62. So it should balance itself out.
Is there any other audience members?
Yeah, there's two.
Excuse my mess, I've just come from my shop and I've got my old stuff on. I don't really know any of you here, and it seems to me like there's some kind of definite, I won't say conspiracy, but some meaning to cover all this up. I've been an hour and a quarter this morning. I've asked 5 different county officials where this meeting was. They'd never heard of it. Finally, I found a guy downstairs, I think he was a janitor, and he said there was something going on here. And I've not got any arguments with this kind of stuff, but I just don't think 11 people or whatever we have are representative of Richmond. And I don't know any of you, I'm sorry, and I know you all do a good job, but there are no signs saying who you are, and I'd just like to know who you are.
Well, my name's Reagan Taylor. And
Yes, I know you, I saw a picture.
Yeah, I've talked to you many times at the Gulf Station.
Yeah,
out there.
you have.
Yeah,
You have.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's
but my name's Reagan Taylor. I'm the county judge executive.
Sure.
And we have multiple meetings a month and have been for a long time. I've been in this seat 11 years, and we've at least, for the most part, had 2 meetings a month. This is a regular scheduled meeting today that's been on our meeting calendar since we voted on adjusting our calendar this year. Since last 2 or 3 months? March, yeah. So we'll be glad to get you a meeting schedule so you can have it in case.
I just worry about 11 people from, 30,000 being representative of the...
Well, we have about 100,000 in Madison County that we represent. This isn't the city of Richmond. This is Madison County Fiscal Court.
But wouldn't you still have more people than this?
How many times
There's almost as many on the committee.
I don't know, sir. There was a...
You don't have to call
bet
me,
you there
sir.
was, I just
Graham.
out of respect. Yeah. We had 500 people probably come in my office last week that I helped over this same situation.
Do you know, I think it would have been nice if you could have put maybe signs up outside. Like I said, I spent an hour and a quarter. Not one city official acted like they'd heard of it. Which just seemed really strange to me. Is it possible to have another meeting where people, there's something else. I dialed it in trying to find the building, and it said under a big thing about 9/11, said date of meeting 2 weeks ago. So I'm sure people must have been pretty confused. And all I'm worried about is that everybody get a chance to say what they think. And I'm sure we need it and everything like that. But I hate to see, like you said, which I heard, you don't want people going on the internet, and doing the finger wagging. So I think if people had a chance, another chance, and I know you probably can't propose things here, but I think it would greatly help. Trying to think of the right words, but the attitude of the people towards the government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, sir, this is what we're having this meeting for today.
Oh, I realize that.
And we're advertising that across the county. We're social media.
I haven't seen
my
it.
number. If you want to you got your phone there. You can put my cell number in your phone. That way, if you ever have. You can put my cell number in your phone.
Oh, I appreciate it. That's
fine. And that way, if you ever have any question, you're not spending an hour and a half trying to find me. I'm on the 3rd floor.
I know.
I would have been up there, but I was in this meeting since 9:30.
You did. You told me when we used to go to BP.
Yeah.
But like I say, I drove around. Don't you think city officials should know about it? There wasn't one of them had a clue.
Well, I would think our city officials would know about it.
I went to both Million Parks. I went down, I even came to this building, but I went in the front and they said they didn't know. And I thought, and one gentleman that I finally found from, he got extremely angry. But I just think that would really help on relations, because I'm afraid we're going to get a big backlash of, and I know how hard that is, you know,
Yeah.
when you're criticized for doing anything, but that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here
What was
today.
your name, sir?
Graham Nichols, Nichols.
Mr. Nichols, I'm Tom Bodkin, the 4th District Magistrate, and I do have
He's your
few,
constituent.
thank you, a few people that follow on Facebook. I put this agenda up on my Facebook page so folks would have an opportunity to see it.
Okay.
And still, there's only a couple people here that are from my district.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's just a combination. I know that they tried to put it up on the Facebook page here. It's a combination of things. People are busy.
I think a lot of
I
older
get
people don't look online.
One other thing that happens is in our fiscal court meetings that we have every 2 weeks, in some cases in 3 weeks, depending on the month, I give out my telephone number at the end of that in every court. I've done it for 11 years now. So, you know, people know who we are. If they want to reach out to us, they can reach out to us. You don't have to just reach out to any single one of us. We all work together. You're not in my district. You're free to call me
I
at any
appreciate
time.
that. But it just bothered me that the city officials weren't aware of it, and
I get it. I understand.
Well, I can tell you that the city officials were invited to this meeting today. I can tell you that for a fact.
I don't mean necessarily the top ones, but maybe second tier, whatever that.
Yeah.
Oh, broke your microphone.
No.
Add some money to that.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Thank you, buddy.
for
Appreciate it.
listening to me.
Dean?
No.
Yeah, he does.
Hey, I'm Dean Vinsel. I think most of y'all know me. So, some of the questions I think that's been already answered, and we don't need to bring it up again. But some of the stuff, and I'm for this fee. Okay, I love the bill I got in. My square footage was wrong, like everybody else's, I believe. But the fee, it was fine. I'm fine with it. Some family members wanted me to come up and talk because they have commercial property that was out of this world. I mean, the fees, and how are they going to absorb that? You know, it's just like you've got rental property. The tenants are probably going to have to absorb that, and it's astronomical, the amount of money that is going to bring in. I mean, literally mine is $35. I love that. It's great. I'll pay it all day long. But they were very, very upset with the amount, $1,500 bills, $1,700 bills on commercial property. That's pretty high. So I just want to voice their opinion. I think that needs to be looked at. I wouldn't mind paying higher, and I think it should be across the board for everybody. If I paid $75 and every other residential person out there pays $75, I'm good with that. I don't think it's fair for somebody that has a 4,500 square foot house to pay more money than me. It should be equal across the board on farm residential. That's my opinion on that. One of the other things I was just talking to Jill about that we haven't brought up is voice over IP phone systems. Everybody's moved to VoIP phones, and we don't have landline phones anymore because copper's going away. Everything, just like the county, the city of Richmond, if you have Spectrum landline phones, they're VoIP phones. And is that tax going away? And I think Jill said that is also going away too. So we just said landline phones, but there's a lot of people that have VoIP phone systems as well. So I think that needs to be told to the public also, that if you have a VoIP phone system, that tax is going away as well. The other questions I have, and I think Jill answered, did EKU, the churches and schools all get on board with this? Are they going to pay their fair share? And I believe she answered it and said yes.
They're going to get a bill, I'll say that. Now,
Did we ever get that settled out with EKU?
it'll be determined whether they pay it. I don't know that
Okay.
answer.
And one of the other things that we have is an increase every year up till fiscal year 30. It was brought up in financial considerations at our meeting that we had out at the extension office that time. I think some of the numbers have changed in it, but will the amount increase each year is kind of what we want to know. Will our tax bill increase with, I mean, I know Wendy's going to have to give raises and stuff like that. 911 will increase, but will the increase of the radio operations and stuff like that increase too? Or are we basically going to have extra money left over because these might be a little bit inflated and we can lower people's rates each year? That's some of the questions I think that needs to be answered too.
That's a good question.
Is it a possibility that, hey, we had extra money because all this stuff's under warranty for the next few years, which Chris brought up a minute ago. So if it's under warranty, or we don't have to spend any money on a lot of this stuff, can we take that money that we've set aside and say, hey, we've got a nice nest egg up here. We don't need to charge the citizens $35 a year, and it might be $32 a year.
I thought it was mentioned that the price could go up and down depending upon the needs.
Chris wants Mike.
The calculation is based every year on the budget need. So if we get into year 2 and we've negotiated a heck of a radio contract and it's not $707,000, then that whole budget need will be recalculated, and maybe it's 0.012 per square foot, right? It'll drop.
But I want the citizens to know that. It
Agreed.
might go down. And I think that we need to tell them and express that out there to them, that this amount might go down if we're good here.
Yes.
Well, I think our goal here, my goal always is that
Go down.
is that it will go down. I mean, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
you can see
that's always our goal here, is to be as efficient as
that
possible.
sheet was just a 1% increase over the 5 years, right? Because it was projected, what would it cost if it continued to raise? And then salaries, you know, I think we used like a 4 or something. The whole spreadsheet kind of has whatever that we thought it might be over the 5 years. Obviously, the whole model was built so that it's based on the budget. So if we come in and all this is lower and it's only 3.9 million, then all of those square footage rates change to match that. Theoretically, everybody's bill would drop. Now, what changes is it's based on calls for service, right? So if for some reason there's no more calls for services to business, that drops, and they drop to 46% of total calls, and they would only pay 46% of the budget. Right now, they're 53% of the calls, right? And they pay 53%. You take that budget number, divide it by the total known square footage, that's how we got that per square footage rate. All of that is in flux every year when the budget is made. So when that budget is projected as what it's going to cost, then that's how we figure out all those rates.
Chris, what did we put in here from a projection of growth? I mean, because Madison County is going to grow, commercial people are going to come in, new apartments are going to be built, new commercial space, all that. How did the task force put anything in there for growth?
I don't know if there's any consideration for growth in.
Compensating rate, maybe?
No, I don't know that, just to be honest, that was considered in it, because.
So that would be considered an upside then down the
So,
road?
It would be.
So the formula, yes, the formula that says, hey, there was only 100,000 square feet of this type of business, well, we grew in businesses, now there's 300,000, their cost is going to lower because their portion will lower in the total, which will be divided out, right? That's what, honestly,
So
that's
to
why
some
this thing
extent,
is
there
awesome.
upside.
Yeah, it
Which
fluctuates
the
with what's
upside would
needed.
be in the benefit of the constituent because their dollar would go down.
You build more houses, that's more residential square footage. Now, does the need for emergency communication rise? Yes, because Richmond may have to have more police officers. Now, again, this fee does not pay for police officers, and it doesn't pay for the radio on their hip. But the entire system that the county operates is what they use, and there could be an expense to the system in order to handle
Well,
more
the
people.
more people, Wendy might need more dispatchers.
Yeah, but
That's correct.
it's still the city of Berea and the city of Richmond. We don't control those.
Correct. We don't control
We're
the people.
just a conduit for them in this particular situation.
Absolutely. We are just the system. They pay for their individual things on their own because the fee
Because I've
won't
seen
let
people
you.
come in complaining to us about something that's in the city of Richmond. We don't control the city of Richmond.
That's been a 21-year problem.
Yeah, Wendy.
Also in the budget, just so you understand now, it is based on, you don't know what you don't know until you take it over. I mean, so we have a lot of fears and a lot of anxieties. Did we even include everything? But also, when you start looking at these projects, it's no different than our budget now. The three governments already catch a shortfall every year for 911, and they have since we consolidated in 2010. Some years, their contribution is less, and some it's more. And it will be the same here because you do not upgrade your PSAP phone system every year. You do the cycle 2 to 3 years, so that goes out. You don't upgrade your radio. So again, those costs, it may fluctuate depending, because a lot of times the governments, even though they were budgeted for that amount, we might not have had to bill them or get it because we got a grant. And sometimes the grant cycles don't run with that. So then anything that you don't use goes into your surplus from prior year, which counts towards your next year's budget, which also takes that cost down. So it streamlines it. So it will go up and down. This is just a projection of what you have no idea and you don't know and you've never had to pay. And so 2 to 3 years down the road, the numbers will, and they should look a lot different, because we're not the ones assigning the numbers out.
Well,
so
and
we don't know.
that's why, I mean, we wish more people would come to our meetings.
Yes, just so you
And
understand.
we do
a little bit.
advertise them, and we try to do the best we can, and we want people to come, because without your input, you know, we may be wrong somewhere. We're not
Exactly.
saying we're perfect. Judges there never said that we're perfect. In fact, he says we're not perfect. We're just trying to do what's in the best of every citizen.
Yeah, so hopefully some of those numbers will, and then we try really hard, and that is, you know, you hope that you don't have to upgrade for 3 years, but if something's mandated, it may be sooner. Or you may say, you know what, it's been a really good 3 years, and I think we could just replace these 2 things and not the whole thing, and we could get by another 2 years. And we've done that several times on CAD upgrades, where we're like, well, you know what, they've not upgraded a lot of the software, we're not, you know, running 2 of these computers because we've been shorthanded, so we'll just switch them out into the most used positions and maneuver them around and those kind of things. So hopefully it will fluctuate some. So those are just projected. That's just because we've never had to do that. You know, we always had the liberty that the CSEP director took all that on and had to make a lot of those decisions back in the day before they left. And so a lot of times, you know, you're left to learn.
Thank you, Wendy. Dean, come on up. Yeah, it's good.
What? I didn't say I was against it, did I? You find that on Facebook, I said that and all. Anyway, the other thing too, so if we move forward where we are now, and then we do have a savings with money, I think we need to, and you all are for this, I know you are, Reagan, and everybody else should be, transparency. Let's go each year and say, hey, we had an exorbitant amount of money, we're okay, so we're going to drop this percentage to this for you all, the citizens of Madison County. Or, hey, we didn't have enough money, we're gonna have to increase it. I think that as long as we get it out there and be transparent, whether it's Facebook, social media, court meetings, whatever, Tom posting, you know, the agenda, as long as we're transparent with the people in Madison County, everything will go good. And it's just like some people said, there's a lot of people didn't know about this meeting. I didn't know about it until Tom posted it. So it was kind of a last second thing. As long as we're transparent with the people in Madison County, they'll understand. Right now, you're right. There's a lot of finger whipping, as you said, going on out there right now. I don't like that word. I think people should be able to post what they want to post. That's their right as an American citizen and a citizen of this county. But there's a lot of truth that wasn't said. There's a lot of stuff that I had a woman post this morning, I don't care to say it on camera, that said, well, since there's enough money out there at Buc-ee's, there's not any money at Buc-ee's that's going to pay for this system. I said, you're exactly wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. And if you want to know, you need to show up at 9:30 to the court meeting. People just don't know.
And
So-
Dean, we all have phone numbers and
That's right.
means to the contact, and people are using that, and that's always available.
Right.
I mean, that, there's no, I mean, that, some of us have 2 or 3 means of communicating with our constituents, and so we encourage people to do that.
Or if they want to say it and they need to say something and they can't come to this court meeting because they're at work. I mean, I understand this is 9:30 in the morning. A lot of people can't come. And they might not be able to watch, but they can watch it later on and understand this. They can reach out to each one of y'all, even if it's not by phone, they can message you on Facebook. I'm sure y'all have Facebook pages that if they want to message you and ask
For
you
now.
questions.
For now. I've
For
got
now.
one for right now.
You might get rid of it.
Come tomorrow, I might just get off of it.
Might be bad if you have 500 people in your
Yeah,
office.
yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway, I think, you know, everybody is out to just butcher the fiscal court. This is wrong. This is just a tax. I'm for it. 911. Y'all know I was in emergency services. I'm for funding this. I'm good with it. I think some things need to be tweaked on the commercial end. It sounds like it's a little high, but that's just my opinion. Y'all have to decide what you're going to do, and that's all I've got.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Dean. One thing I think is important to bring up that Dean kind of talked about, we haven't really hit on it too much, is the tenant thing. You know, a lot of people have said, I'm sure y'all have heard it too, is that, you know, tenants aren't paying this. And unfortunately, there is no way to really get tenants except through the landlords, the owners of the property. I know we had, I know the task force had conversations about that. I know we talked about it quite a bit. It's because it is a fee that we feel like everybody should pay. And the intent, you know, I think that was discussed was, correct me if I'm wrong, Jill, or any task force members, Wendy, is that, you know, that the hope was, and the other reason to postpone it a year was so that landlords could get leases, language, you know, agreements fixed, so that could be passed on. Is that correct? And so the dean, I'm gonna add that. So the dean, you know, that you know, family members that have units of some kind or square footage, is that, you know, that would be figured into I guess a rent agreement, I guess what I'm trying to say, whether that be whatever kind of property it is. I'm not going to get specific. I think you and I know.
I don't think they had the numbers for this year because I think, just like Larry had said, sorry for not coming back up to the mic, Larry had said earlier that, hey, I might have a lease agreement that comes up next year and this tax is going to be put on in October. I don't know what the amount was, you know, going to be, and now I'm going to be out that money until then. So he just really didn't know. I know we had a year, it was on the tax bill, or zero
Last
tax
year.
just to show, hey, it's on the tax bill, but nobody knew what their amount was going to be until this, so.
Yeah.
I think you're exactly right, Judge. I think the intent was the notification and the process in 2024 with the public meetings and the multiple hearings and all those sorts of things that happened, and the proposed scale, I guess, or rate that was put out there as part of the ordinance and everything was that, hey, that gave people time to plan. I think it gave people time to say, hey, this is coming. We may not know down to the penny exactly what it'll be, but if I know that it's 0.016 per square foot and I have 2,000 square feet, I know that that's going to be X number of dollars. I think that was the intent, so that you could, and that was one of the reasons the fiscal court decided to have that extra year before it actually went on the property tax bills. So as you renegotiate leases, I know there's times when you have 3-year, 5-year, 10-year leases or long-term leases. I have learned, talking to some business owners, that, you know, there's not a lot of triple net leases that are happening in our community, maybe as there would be other places where as your insurance cost adjusts or your property taxes adjust on your lease, that you have the ability to adjust that with your tenants. I think that there's some of that happens for some landlords and some that it doesn't. That is exactly the intent, though, that you had a year to, as a vacancy comes open, as you renegotiate a lease, that you at least had some ability to put those provisions in your leases and or raise your rent or whatever that cost may be.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir.
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, please. It's just, Edwin, it's so people can hear you that are watching or going to watch.
Okay. I just want to say something in reference to what she just said that's not always correct. I have a 10-year lease with a national company on Main Street here in Richmond. And in that lease, it says that if any tax increases occur, they will pay no more than 5%. So if there's a $2,000 increase, which can easily happen, they'll pay $100. I just want you to know that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you brought that up to me the other day, Edwin. I appreciate that. We've been having some discussions too, because, you know, internally we don't know where this is going to go yet, but we have had some conversations of, if, you know, a landlord can't collect that from their tenant, is there another way that we could get it from the tenant? Because again, it's a user fee. I mean, that's, and again, people say it's a tax. You know, it's a tax, and I'm not going to argue that one way or the other. But state law, if you read the KRS state law, allows it to be a fee. It does not allow it to be a tax, and there is a difference. But there's no doubt that some things, you know, we've got to figure out, I think. And so I appreciate y'all being here today. And it's not over. I'm not ending it. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, run my mouth. My wife wife said to me before I left, she said, surely you're not going dressed like that, so I apologize again. I was just wondering, and I'm not trying to criticize it, how much money do you approximate we can get in from these fees, or is it, I was just thinking.
4.2 million, approximately 4.2
Okay,
million.
that's great. I was thinking about the money that's not used at the time. Is there somebody we can trust who would invest it at, say, 4%, which is fairly conservative, but have a clause in there where if you need extra money, you can, you can take it out whenever you want, kind of like a HELOC home where you have your.
I think that's actually, I think all that has actually sort of been figured in this model.
Oh, okay.
I can't
I'm
remember.
sorry.
No, it's okay. You don't have to apologize. I can't remember the actual average percentage, but now one thing you have to know is governments can't invest in things just on the open market like a private individual
That's
can.
good.
So there's only certain things that we can invest in under state law, but those things have. But 3-4% on average, I think, is what has been figured into this financial
Okay,
model.
that's good on that amount of money. I wanted to say.
You also got to consider that there's 3 individual entities that own this money.
Sure.
And own this project.
So you'd have to have
So
an
they would have to
agreement.
vote on their own.
Yeah.
And these funds can't be mixed with general fund dollars either. So know that. They can only be in 911 fund. There's a totally
Okay.
separate fund.
The other one thing I wanted to say was, when I've ever had the police come and I've dialed 911, they are the nicest bunch of people I've ever met. Only they all look 12 years old, and a lot of them are friends of mine, but they just couldn't be nicer. I just was so impressed with that. So, but that's all I wanted to say. But I understand if there's 3, and I want to thank you all again, and I'm sorry if I offended anybody.
No way,
So-
no way. No, sir.
Thank you for
Not at
being
all.
And I expect to see you at BP in the morning for coffee.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right. Sure.
I just wanted to ask, the letters didn't get to our office until Thursday evening, so we've been working real hard on,
Appreciate you bringing that up, Eric, because that is one of the things we want to talk. We have this, we've extended that deadline, I think, till July 15th.
that was going to be my question.
And we'll extend it again. One of, July 11th?
Yeah, I just need a
Sorry.
few more days.
It's a
all.
Friday, I guess, July 11th.
Okay, that was my only question.
So, and if we need to extend it farther, we will. I think that was the next question in the most frequently asked is, why did you only give 10 days to appeal? Well, the strategy behind that is that if you'd have given 2 months, then probably the majority of the letters have been in the trash can because somebody would have waited and postponed them coming. We wanted it to be a sense of urgency. We wanted to get people's attention so that we can make sure that this information obviously was correct. Yeah. So I know sometimes people can speculate, some people could say their intents were to, hide this, throw this, sweep it under the rug, whatever the case may be, but that's not our intent. Our intent is to have a good way to be able to fund 911, and it to be fair across the board.
And I think the other thing too, obviously, we don't control, nor can we predict the USPS, can we, Kenny?
No, ma'am.
He complains about that frequently. And so obviously, we don't know, hey, what envelopes aren't going to be forwarded. We don't know which ones are going to be returned to sender. We don't know which ones didn't get to where they were supposed to go or didn't get there as timely, maybe as we thought they should have. So obviously, opening that window, we have not, nor are we cutting off the appeal portal today. That has not been our intent, and that is not our intent. On top of that, for those maybe like you, Eric, that have multiple properties, we've sat down with multiple property owners so that you're not putting in any discrepancies individually. We'd welcome that to do that. We did that with some other large property owners last week and went through all of theirs individually and said, hey, this is this has a class that I don't think is right. This is what this situation is. So we'd welcome our citizens to come to our office and do that. We've done that many, many times to make it a little easier on those who may had a stack of letters versus maybe just one letter.
You also still continue to do that at the ELC?
Yes, it's probably easier. We're doing that at the EOC. Chief Gray and his team there at the EMA have been taking EOC, and then we've been taking them in the judge's office as well. And then we have other members of our team. Magistrate Hughes brought that up this morning. We have other members of our team from finance and from planning and from various agencies that have recommitted to this project and helping our citizens. Whether that be via email or answering the phone or helping them submit their appeals or going through their statements themselves.
Does anybody from the city offer that same opportunity in their jurisdiction?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
You think there'll be another mailing after the corrections are done? Or maybe to those that have been modified?
I'm not sure that I'm at liberty to commit to that, Magistrate Hughes. It's very expensive, obviously, to send a piece of mail to 39,893, I think is the number. That's a very expensive first-class mail to go to those. I think that would be definitely something that we would want to consider strongly. I think that is why you want to invest in the technology. So if Eric has 30 properties, he can look up all 30 properties on his own, or he can come to our office and look those up, as opposed to sending a piece of mail that may or may not get there, they may or may not throw away at a very large expense. But obviously, that'll be a decision of the fiscal court if that's what the fiscal court
Well, it
decides
could
to
also
do.
be confusing to the constituents again, too, so we can take that under consideration if need be, but.
So that's a great question, Dean. I don't know if you all could hear that. If you made an appeal.
Repeat it.
Okay,
thank you.
If
Repeat
you
his
made an
question.
appeal, how will you be notified, or what does that look like? So for those of you who have already made an appeal, or you have made an appeal, you're gonna get at least 2 emails back. You're gonna get an email that says, thank you for your submission, here's the next steps, here's what's gonna happen, here's what you put in. Here's what is going to be put in, and here is what exactly you appealed for, whether that's wrong class, wrong square footage, landline, or contiguous property. In addition, after the database is changed, you're going to get a second email that says this has been changed. Your zone classification has changed from multifamily to single family, and this has been changed. And so it's all outlined. We've probably processed, I'm going to say 300-ish. Maybe a few more, maybe a few less. We've had members even of our 911 team that have started helping process those appeals that were incorrect zones or things of that nature. So anytime you put in an appeal, you're going to receive at least 2 emails back. Now, if you come in and we do that for you, you don't have an email address or something of that nature, you're not going to get that same notification.
How many appeals have you gotten, Jill?
A lot.
Roughly.
I'm going to say roughly 3,000, and that's probably on the. I just from
3,200.
That's processed. That is ones that we've put in on people's behalf. That is in the total.
That's about 10%.
Well, yeah, it'd be 3,900. Our magic number has been 10% the whole time. So when we got to 3,900, we were like, oh, let us stay below that. So.
That was our goal.
I mean, our goal is to have them all right, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, our goal was, but we're going to have some.
Reality's different.
All right. You want
Anybody else?
I don't know if, we have these frequently asked. One might be good. We've known CSEP was going to come to an end. Why are we suddenly needing funding now? Which I think we've kind of answered that today.
I think the only other one that I saw on the list is if you don't live here anymore, or you've sold your property. Obviously, when you sell a property, it takes a period of time for that transaction to happen and be recorded in all the different resources, whether that's the PVA or whatever that happens. So there's obviously a window in which the data is pulled over that you may have sold a property in that window. Our suggestion, and after talking with Billy and the other teams that do property tax, there's a process when with your property taxes, if you sell a property, and forwarding that to the new owner and what that looks like. And so we would ask everybody to treat this exactly the same way. If you get information that is for a property you no longer own or that sort of thing, to treat it the same way as you would your property tax bill.
Judge, I had one other question that maybe we can answer here or not, especially with counsel here. A taxing district, is there a way for us to restructure a taxing district, for example, EMS? Once that taxing district is established, can the fiscal court do anything to do any kind of restructure to include this in say, EMS taxing district? That's just a question that I had, and I don't know the answer to it. I don't know how complicated it is to redo a taxing district, or if it's even possible.
I don't know about the ambulance piece of it. I don't think it can be, but I know that you cannot have a 911 taxing district because 911 fee is not a tax, it's a fee.
Right.
But I'm not sure about restructuring of ambulance. Jill, I don't know. Jenny, I don't know.
It depends on the taxing district, and I have to look up the statute.
Yeah.
I don't know that any of us know offhand. There is a process, is when we've looked into this previously with other, that you would go through, and it's based on how it was established. And I think based on how at the time, it was called the ambulance board, was established through all three local governments, and how that was established, I think there's a different process based on how the SPGE was established. And so I don't know that offhand. Obviously, Jenny doesn't either, but we're happy to look it up and follow up with that. I know what we've anecdotally been told by other council and counties is that it is a difficult process, but that doesn't mean it's not possible.
I understand. I just wanted to present the question because it has been asked. And I understand the complexity of it. I know that once they're established, you're limited to what you can do.
Well, I think sometimes two people mix 911 and EMS, kind of being the same, even on the property tax bill, it's two different things.
Yeah. And I can understand that, the question. It's, when you think of ambulance, you're thinking of being dispatched through 911, and maybe even having a public service taxing district, or a emergency taxing district that would encompass all of these. But that's just something that we can look at. That's options.
So it does happen in some communities that you have a public safety. There's places where in the state, like Davis County, they have a fire taxing district. And so they collect to pay for fire service. They collect a fire service fee on there. And I think there's public safety where they sometimes roll everything under one umbrella, things of that nature. A lot of times that's a little different, whether it's set up as an SPGE or if it's set up as a taxing authority underneath a fiscal court. Did I say that right, Counselor?
Yes. Chapter 75 Fire District.
There you go.
Debbie Vescio. The thing, so it's July 11th that it's been extended to?
For now.
For now, right. And I know you talked about Facebook and that sort of thing. My suggestion would be, and request would be, that you also run that in the paper, because there are a lot of people who don't do Facebook, nor do they do email. I've actually tried to help people out with the letters that they've had because they don't have internet. So if you could make them aware of it, that would be very helpful. Then I could actually help more people that have come to me and thought that it was too late. So that's my request of the court. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate it.
So thankfully, Steve and the Richmond Register is here, and I can guarantee that he's going to put that in the headline, Debbie, that June 11th will now be the, July 11th will now be the, yeah, don't put that.
And we did invite, Kenny Kelly's here.
Yep.
So, yeah, too, so. But we did invite, you want to talk about that, Jill?
Yeah, so
You
we
invited-
did invite local media. Obviously, they get notification anytime we have a meeting and the agenda is set out. We are actually also invited all of the Lexington television stations to today's meeting as well, in an encouragement for people to know and for that coverage to be had, to make sure that that correct information does get out. I will say that, obviously we've helped hundreds of people in our office. The Madison County Public Library, I feel like I have to give them a shout out because we've had a couple of citizens call us that have gone to the library and they've had staff there that have actually been helping them submit appeals and things of that nature, and they've called us with questions. So that has also occurred, just for notification purposes. And the only other thing, Judge, if I may, that was on my notes here that I want to make sure, and Wendy touched on it a little bit, but
Well, before you go there, will you just talk about the EOC, people going to the EOC too? Mm-hmm. Is that what you're getting ready to say? Or will you add that to where everybody's been going? Because some people have been going to Wendy and her team, Chief, out to Mercy Management Center.
yeah. So we had people going to that are helping people fill out appeals and helping with their documentation at the Emergency Operations Center, which is on 560 South Keeneland Drive. Chief Gray and his staff have been putting in appeals for people. They've been helping walk them through why this is important. As we mentioned, Wendy and her staff have already been helping in that processing standpoint as well as people coming here. Obviously, the PVA has also been extremely helpful. Very helpful in getting people their square footage information or whatever information that they needed, and helping them understand the difference in improved square footage versus total square footage. So that was another big help. I'm not sure about any of our other agencies, if they've gotten a lot of questions or things at that point, but obviously you can still come to 135 West Irvin Street here to get assistance. Chief and his staff at 560 South Keeneland Drive will help. And then there's the online option as well.
All right, sorry. Go ahead with you.
So the only other thing I don't think we've mentioned, and Wendy may have touched on it just a little bit, but as we talk about the budget and what that looks like, we've talked a lot about that these funds can only be used for certain things, and it's outlined in KRS what those are. We get audited on that every year. We have been audited. We've already gotten our audit for this year on, hey, are you using these fees that have been collected appropriately and on the appropriate things? And so we have never misused those. We've had a clean audit and no findings on any of those things. And so I think that's important for our citizens to know that there's some maybe rumors out there, or there's some misinformation that's being put out there of, hey, you need to dive into that. Well, there is an independent team that dives into that every single year from the state 911 board that we have to submit to, and they have to come back and say, yes, here's every expenditure that you've made and what that looks like. Did I leave anything out, Wendy?
Am I correct in saying that all of our budgets, will be approved by this body and also the Department of Local Government? There's layers of audits, not just from the auditor's office or 911. There's multiple.
Well, our budget, we obviously create a draft budget that we all get. It's first reading. Mm-hmm. And then that first reading, after the first reading, it actually gets sent to the Department of Local Government. They review it and make sure that it's kind of checked off. They send it back. Once we get it back in their letter, then that's when we have our second reading. Mm-hmm. And then we approve it, which this budget has been approved for this year. We approved it last Tuesday. I have seen some transparency things not being transparent. Our budget is always, and as long as I'm here, will always be online. Our budget for next year starts tomorrow. It's already online, has been, I guess, since probably last week.
Well, actually, since the first reading, so the draft is online.
Okay, so the draft's online. So that's how long this coming up budget has been on our website.
You reckon that'll be a headline in the media?
I don't know about that. Yeah,
I bet it's something else.
Yeah.
But it's also, the state auditor reviews our budget as well. Even,
Oh, yeah,
it's.
Well, Well, in addition, the 911 specifically gets another audit on top of that from the state 911
There's
board.
technically 2 audits for 911.
Yeah.
We get ours and our county audit, and then,
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's another
yeah.
one.
One other thing I think I want to hit on too is because I've seen this, again, on social media a lot, was people talking about, do we have the authority to do this? And I don't know if we really hit on this today, but KRS does give local authority to have a 911 fee. And that, and again, I think we hit it a little bit on it earlier that, this has been, I think, always the Supreme Court, people challenging it, whether it be the utility companies challenging it, whether they don't want to have to fool with collecting it or what have you. But you want to hit on that a little bit, Jill?
So yes, the KRS does give local authority to assess a 911 fee for exactly what we were just talking, very specific things on what it can include and what it cannot include. This is the same legislation that actually gave the Fiscal Court, the City of Richmond, the City of Berea authority back in 1989 to put a landline fee on. So it's the exact same KRS that allows you to do either one. To Judge Taylor's point, this has been challenged previously by different entities all the way through the Kentucky Supreme Court, whether that is the methodology. There was a challenge in Campbell County. We talked about them earlier. There was actually a challenge in Campbell County, and it went to the Supreme Court, which ruled in favor of Campbell County that they had the authority, and they had the authority to use the methodology in which they chose, which was like a hybrid model. So all of those things not only are outlined in KRS, but they are also have had a complete judicial review that gives that authority as well.
All right. All right, anybody else? Well, before we kind of maybe start getting close.
On this appeal process, one of the things I've heard from several people is that the burden of proof is on the individual if they want to appeal, they got to provide some kind of documentation. Now, me personally, I'm a type of person that will trust the individual, and if they're willing to be deceitful, they got to live with that. But as far as providing some kind of documentation of their house plan, I just think we need to just trust people. And if they're going to lie, well, let them. They got to live with it.
Well, I think for the most part, the way we are, I mean, the thing about like house plans, I'm not going to sit here and say we need house plans, because actually when you pull up on the PBA site, the structure, there's a picture of it, so you can see whether it's a house or apartment complex or a business, so you can see that. And then also, part of the PBA's job is to measure properties, and so there's actually a little sketch. So, what we've been doing is just saying, hey, is this right? Do you have approximately this square foot, improved in the garage? And so I think for the most part, we don't want, in the beginning, some people were talking about going and getting appraisals and, having to do all that. Well, no, we don't want to get an appraisal, have to spend all that money for an appraisal to prove that the property is what it is. We can see it.
But, and there have been more people than not that have either they've provided and attached those things. The appeal process, for those of you who have completed it and looked through that, it has an option for you to open field text that information, but it also allows you to attach those documents. If you've had a recent sale or and you have an appraisal that says, hey, I just want you to know I'm being truthful, and here's the appraisal. It allows you to attach those things. That could be your phone bill. I mean, we've had people send us pictures of the outside of their house that said, hey, it's clearly a single-family home. Just wanted you all to know it. And so
that's not mandatory.
So it is not, but the open field text of telling us why is important, because, well, you got to know why someone thinks it's incorrect in order to correct it.
I just passed that on, this burden of proof. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? So I want to ask a question here before we end today is if I just need some guidance. As chief executive of the county, I need some guidance from the members of the Fiscal Court in the direction that you all would have us take this. We've been trying to do our best in communicating with folks. I'm very, very, very proud of our team, and it's everybody, people in the finance finance office, people in my office, Robin and Jill and myself, we've been meeting with people. People are calling me. I'm going to people's houses. I'm trying to have conversations with some people on to call me, reaching out to them through social media. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, but nevertheless, we're trying to make sure this is right. Wendy's team, I know you all have been trying to help as well, but I got to have some guidance and direction of the direction that we need to go in. Again, we're doing this also for ourselves, but also for the cities of Berea and city of Richmond. I just need some direction. What do we need to do?
I kind of had just two questions to that, Judge. One question is, what happens if we delay it another year? What does that look like?
Well, if we delay it another year, I mean, there's going to be a certain amount of money that each government is going to have to pony up to have 911 operate. Now, I think there's some things in the budget that, are for future expenses, sort of the life cycle replacement, capital projects. I think some of that you could back out of that budget for this year, and that's not something that we would necessarily have to put up. I have not seen exactly what that looks like. In the past, if you all remember all budgets that we've done since I've been here, whatever the shortfall in 911 was, that each government just split that equally. Mm-hmm. So everybody just sort of chipped in 33.3%. I mean, of whatever the shortfall was. So, again, we have an ordinance first and foremost. We have a law already on the book. So I think if the intent of this group is to do anything, we would have to adjust or amend that ordinance in some form or fashion. Then the cities also have resolutions or orders, depending on what they call theirs, of approving us to do this on their behalf. And so they would need to change their resolutions or orders, maybe. I'm not sure, but.
Have to agree to it as well.
Yes.
I guess, the second question,
Now, the cities also, they have their own tax bill as well. So, if they don't necessarily agree with our decision, and they 100% without a doubt believe in this methodology, which they've already said they have because they voted for it, then they have the right to do it however they want to do it.
Yeah, that was my second question: is what happens if the three governments go on their own and pay their share? Is that an option as well? And you address that.
Yeah, I mean, that discussion would have to be had. I think, Jill, you can add something to it if you want, but
So I think part of that is it's twofold. Obviously, there's an ordinance. There's actually two ordinances that are on the books from the fiscal court. There's a 911 fee classification, as we've kind of talked about today, and then you also have a joint interlocal agreement between how the operations of the 911 actually occurs, which references that fee structure, which they all have signed and passed as well. Mm-hmm. So it would be revisiting both of those things, I think, or independently. But I think that both of those things that have been to all three governments, and if their decision is differently and how they would like to collect their portion, based on the call data, which is what the interlocal says, then they would develop their own methodology. But there's actually probably, I guess, technically two laws on the book: the interlocal that formulates it, as well as the 911 fee ordinance. If that makes sense.
It does.
And and there's also too, just remember whenever the our task force was working through this, you had the emergency management side of it too that is totally separate, right? Mm-hmm. It's not the same, but in restructuring this, there was always also that piece of the emergency management piece that in the past the county's always provided that service inside city limits, outside city limits. So now that's also a mutual joint venture too with the cities, is the EMA side and the 911. So I don't know how that would. It's a separate interlocal as well. It is, but I don't know if we did away with one, would we wait and do that at a later time too? Because they were both kind of discussed and figured out at the same time, I don't know. There's a lot of questions there. What I need today is direction. We're obviously, if that is a direction we need to go in, we're going to have to, get leaders from both cities together with the task force to try to, if that's the direction that y'all are asking me to go.
What about the nonprofits? There's some of those that's had some pretty legitimate. Can you talk about that any at all, or is it too soon to even mention that? Well,
I don't think anything's, too soon to mention. I think nonprofits were classified as under that business commercial classification, when they looked at the numbers. And again, it was just it's where they fell. Most of those individuals were paying a fee, right? Most everybody, the intent was already paying a fee because would have a landline. And so, I think some of the nonprofits think that their fee's a little extreme being under that classification. And so, again, this group has to look to see do we need to change that? That's direction I need, guys. That's what I'm
That's the big
asking.
concern for me is some of the
That's what I'm asking.
nonprofits, that, if I had known what the impact would be on some nonprofits, I probably wouldn't have been supportive. It got by me. I didn't realize it. So that's the big sticking point for me. Other than that.
Well, and again, I think, when the task force was, I think, looking at all that, some of those nonprofits that maybe are only open 3 or 4 hours a month, maybe you could say that's a little extreme, right? But some of those same nonprofits might be open every day for 10 hours.
Well, when we were down there, the extension offices, and we all talked about it, all the cities, all the meetings, we were all down there. It was brought up by a city commissioner from Berea, I guess. Is that what they call them? Councilman from Berea, about exceptions. And I think we all agreed, when you start accepting people from an agreement like this because of 911 and the emergency that they respond to, where does the exception start? Where do they stop? How do you allow one versus another? Not saying that's not anything that we should take a look at. I'm just saying, once you open Pandora's box, you got to think about where does it stop, and who is it that is the ultimate judge of whether that one should qualify or shouldn't qualify.
I can tell you one judge that it won't be, and that's the judge executive. I won't be the judge of that. Yeah. Whatever you want to say, Jill.
Well, I think that
Time we got to figure it out.
Yeah,
This
to
clock's
that point, the way that the interlocal has been created and the way that the ordinance was created is there is the Public Safety Advisory Board is the ultimately appeal body. And so anything that does not necessarily is not a cut and dry, that either it's a square footage issue or an obvious zoning issue that gives the PVA and the process an ability to change, goes to the Public Safety Advisory Board for them to review those appeals. So that's how it's written in the ordinance. That's how that structure is. I think a member from the county attorney's office sits on that as a legal counsel. I think the county clerk and the PVA are both there as well by their elected positions. So there is a body that has representatives from all 3 local governments that is part of that ultimate decision-making on what the final outcome is.
And I know we know who those people are. Is it easily accessible for a citizen to click one time or two and get there?
Yes, sir.
Do they meet frequently? Jill, is that?
They meet monthly. Based on the interlocal, they are deemed to meet at the minimum of quarterly, but they choose to meet monthly.
Okay.
And it is the third Wednesday of each month at 10 a.m. at the Emergency Operations Center.
Public
Public meeting, open meeting laws, public notices, it's all out there.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Just direction from my perspective, Judge, I know that's what you're looking for, is, I see the work that our team has done, and I think they've done a great job. And I don't see any reason to change what we've got going, the motion is the wheels are moving, so, I'm not inclined to change it. And I think the process, like Jill just said, I mean, if there is appeals that can be reviewed, there's a process for that. So, from my perspective, I wouldn't say change anything.
Judge, I pretty much feel the same way, plus we haven't allowed this to play out yet. I mean, we ought to go through and see where there are positives and negatives and things that maybe we need to change. And all this is subject to go up and go down. It's also subject that we might, as a intergovernment entity, decide that we made a mistake. But the good thing is, we're doing what's best for the citizenry. It's in place. It can be changed by this board because it's governed by this board, and the fee goes up and down based upon the needs of the services that we're trying to provide with this fee, not tax. So I'm comfortable with moving forward.
All right.
So I would just add, Judge, that for me, given that this letter that went out to everybody, we all got one of them, it didn't just get printed off last week in the terms of how it was calculated. We put a board, the task force together, and they worked on that for over a year. There was discussions about that when all the governments were involved, and they had representatives on that, and everybody looked at it, and everybody agreed to, except one person. That's fine. They had their voice. And, here we are at this point in time where we're having this meeting because citizens have spoke up against it. And that's fine, we understand it. But the bottom line comes down and still has to be, we still have to pay for 911 services. And this was the model that our task force chose, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. This was after their years' worth of research, this was the model that they came to, and I support that. I think that the other city governments should make an affirmation to that. And what I mean by that, we're taking all the heat for it. That's fine. We wear big shoes. We get paid to do that. But our other city governments and they should also step up and let their citizenry know. Richmond needs to let theirs know. Britt needs to let theirs know, hey, we all voted for this. This was what our task force chose, and this is where we're at today. I support it.
They've all got members on the board. So, I mean, just because one individual didn't think enough to be positive and vote for this, it was very unanimous, and I think the right minds voted in the right way.
All right.
Almost adjourned.
Real quick, let's make sure we announce the next meeting. I want to give other electeds any opportunity. Regular scheduled meeting. Sheriff, you good? Counselor? Sheriff, you good? You good?
Judge, I do have one more thing I'd like to say. If you're sitting in this courtroom today, it's because you care about our county. You care about your taxes, and you took time out of your day to come up here and listen to us. Could everybody do that? No, and we understand that. But I'm sure that there's people online who is also taking time out of their day because they care and they're listening. And we appreciate that, and we appreciate your feedback. At no time do we want you to think that we don't care about what you think. That's our job, is to care about what you think. And so we appreciate your input all the time. And my number is 859-200-9765. You can call me anytime.
I will add a little bit to that, though, because I do get a lot of, I see comments about people saying, well, you have it when nobody can come, everybody's working. Well, I disagree with that because I know that there's a whole lot more people than the ones that were here today that either work second shift, third shift, or are retired. Not everybody works first shift.
I got tickled because I saw somebody that was retired saying they couldn't get here.
But there's an extra expense for us, you know, when we have a meeting after hours, you know, our staff, people that need to come here, so anyway. All right, our next meeting is July the 8th. Remember that we're back on our normal schedule now that we've got courthouse done, we got our fiscal courtroom completed. And so the first meeting of every odd month is always held in Berea at the Berea Council Chambers. And so July is an odd month, which means our first meeting will be in Berea at the Berea Council Chambers at 9:30 a.m. on July the 8th, 2025. I need a motion and a second to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Master Bacon?
Yes.
Master Combs?
Yes.
Master Lockmuller?
Yes.
Master Hughes?
Yes.
Judge Taylor?
Yes. Thank you.